We'll have to talk.
Calling this meeting to order, let's all stand and pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, first item on the agenda is roll call. I would like to make an announcement that Mr. Stelter is not joining us tonight. His sister-in-law is probably dead at this point in time, and so he's the only surviving relative, and so he was taking care of things for her. So he will not be with us today. All right. Can I have roll call, please?
Mayor Bachran,
Here. Oh, and our clerk is online. We're giving it a shot tonight to see how it works online. Okay. All right. Go ahead, Amanda.
Trustee Knutson,
Here.
Trustee Valentine,
Here.
Trustee Smith,
Here.
Trustee Markle,
Here.
Trustee Weber.
Present.
All right, we have a quorum and can continue. First item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda? Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion by the board? Hearing none, all in favor?
All right.
All right, that motion passes. Next is announcement. First, I have a wonderful announcement. I would like to announce that our interim chief of police, Matthew Laminger, has been promoted to official chief of police. And can we give that man? Would you please stand, sir? He has worked very hard to achieve this, and we are incredibly proud of him and happy to have him as our official chief of police.
Thank you.
Thank you. The second item of business is that RCAC has finished their sewer cost analysis. And they would like to set a special meeting. They're hoping for the 11/29, so November 29th at 5 p.m. to set that special meeting to go over that with us. And if that works for the board, can we go ahead and set that? So it'll be November 29th at 5 p.m. for the sewer cost of service analysis presentation.
Tuesday.
That is a Tuesday. You say it's 5 p.m.
Thank you. RCAC.
RCAC.
You want to do that in a regular meeting?
Oh, it's probably going to take too long. And I don't think she's available. Yeah, so this is when she is available. So how's the board's availability for that?
Yep.
Steve?
I don't know.
Ed?
I have to work with that. Did you? It's good.
Okay, Thomas?
I don't know yet. We offline. Schedule offline.
Well, we probably need to set it in a board meeting.
We can schedule by email if we need to. For the next.
Okay. All right. All right. So I will send out an email tomorrow to schedule that special meeting. All right, next is recognition of community and guests. I'd like to welcome everyone, and we're pleased to have you in attendance this evening. We welcome your comments, questions, and suggestions to address the board. Please raise your hand and wait to be called on by the name. Then come to the podium and state your name and the street on which you live. If you are on Zoom, please use the raise hand function to be recognized. If you're on the phone, you don't have to be on the phone. All comments should be addressed to the mayor only and be no longer than 3 minutes. You may speak once on each agenda item. It will help the board to hear and understand your comments if they are clear, concise, and respectful. Please present factual information. Personal attacks of any kind are not in order, as well as derogatory or demeaning statements about anyone, speaking without being recognized by the chair, or speaking on topics not related to the agenda item being discussed, except during the public comment period. Questions or comments to staff or board will not be answered during the meeting, but responded to later. Unless you are called upon by the mayor, please be respectful of those around you and those who have the floor by remaining silent. Please take any side conversations outside the room. Is there anyone who would like to address the board about a subject that is not on the agenda? All right, seeing none, let's move on to the consent agenda. We only have disbursements on the consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Finance committee has reviewed the disbursements and found in order. I move to approve the disbursement.
Okay, do I have a second on that motion?
Second that.
Discussion by the board? Okay.
No, Tom.
Oh, Thomas, I'm sorry. T.
Yeah, the paychecks include something like $15,000 in bonuses as Corinne's outgoing gesture. I noticed that her final pay amount is also considerably higher than her like normal monthly or bi-weekly amount. I was wondering if anybody in the finance committee or Cindy could explain Corinne's bonus to me.
What I can tell you is I don't know what Corinne's bonus was, but the reason that the paychecks are higher is that they gave out the PTO that people have accrued. They did it now as opposed to at the end of the year. But I can't tell you about the bonuses. That was not, that was not specifically set aside that I saw. How about you, Dave?
I didn't see it.
Yes.
I did see the PTO stuff. We discussed that.
The
Right,
only bonuses that were paid was to me and to Corey. The rest of it is vacation payout.
And that goes for Ms. Ferguson as well.
Yes.
When someone leaves an organization.
She
they-
still has another paycheck. This isn't her final
Right,
paycheck.
but they get all their.
I understand that, KTR, I assume that was part of it.
There was no
yeah, she does not have a bonus.
Okay,
So if you'd like to approve a bonus for her final paycheck, that would be appropriate at this time.
Yes.
no, pass, thank you. Okay, so we don't have any the actual numbers as far as bonuses or PTO broken out.
PTOs we have, we log that regularly, but what they're doing is they're paying it out early so people can go Christmas shopping rather than very. I'm not eligible.
I'm not saying it shouldn't be paid. I'd just like to see how much it is. I think that that's appropriate.
Yes.
So two things, there is a spreadsheet that shows everyone's hours overtime and PTO, and that we approve. But I can't tell you what the bonuses were.
Those were on their own, so.
And I didn't see, I didn't look at those, so I'm sorry, I did not identify those. So at this point, would you like to have that spreadsheet attached to the next disbursements?
I mean, if there's no large discrepancies like that, I don't think it matters.
Okay.
But in this instance, if I can get that, that would be great.
Anything else, Mr. Marco?
Not really. I noticed that there's no details on the credit card billing statement or I guess that there is the for this round or the fuel is like $1,000, but we don't know how it went out, but I trust that everything's fine. So I guess that's it.
Okay, anything else from the board? All right.
Yes. I have a question that came up after I was reviewing the packet, after we were, what is wordcap.com?
Yes.
That's the transcription service.
Oh, okay.
Signs up for, and honestly, if you guys want to cancel that at this point, we can. I'm not being very, I haven't been doing it regularly, but I think it's probably really valuable service if there are meetings that we want to look back on and get a transcript of, rather than typing it or just counting on minutes. I found it to be very useful. Some summaries like what I showed you page for the advisory water committee before. It just makes a lot of sense. So I don't know if we can do anything about it right now or not.
Yeah,
So I would just ask a follow-up question of trustee Markle. If we are interested in getting one for a particular meeting, do we just request it of you?
Yeah, I can do it. I have shared back in June, I shared publicly the folder or with the board, the folder was the ones that I was working on. So all the ones that I've done are in that folder, so probably check there first, but if there is one in particular, if you're interested, I'm happy.
Okay, thank you.
all right, anything else from the board? All right, we have a motion and a second to accept the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. Next is staff report. Ms. Jones,
Provided a report, and I have nothing further.
questions for Ms. Jones from the board? Okay. Anything from the public? All right, moving on, police report. Questions for Chief Lemminger? From the board? Yeah.
Could you tell me your Facebook page title?
Officer Kramer is running that. I don't have the exact name. Full disclosure, I'm not real familiar with Facebook. We tasked him with that. I'm learning, but
I believe it's Paonia Police Department.
Thank you.
Anything else from the board? Yes, Mr. Houston?
Thank you. I appreciated the time going through the law enforcement area and the tour that we did on Monday. Really informative.
All right, yes.
I have one last question. In your report, it's the department is currently responding to a mental health suicide call approximately every other week. So I just am curious, how do you feel about, are you feeling prepared? How are you involved?
I feel much better about it now that we are working with the co-responder program and the mobile crisis unit. That is helping when we get to those calls where we're there in time and we can talk to people face to face. The other part of that I would like to mention is increasingly we are getting called much too late. And so I would task the public, the community in general, to check on your neighbors, reach out to people, talk to them, call your friends, make sure everybody's doing okay. Things are harder for everybody. We're headed to the holidays, but we have tools that we can help people with when they're still breathing. It's much more difficult than not. So trying to help everybody out.
Chief Lemminger, when you say way too late, what do you mean by that term?
Our suicide rate.
Oh, so they have already committed suicide at the
Yeah.
time. you get there.
At that point, our ripple effect in the community tends to go out. Our victim services are amazing. We help the families, children are involved, other people are involved, but we've talked to several people who have said, I got a call from my mom, I got a call from a coworker that morning or that night, and it just, set me on a different path, and that was helpful. So just encourage everybody to check on each other a little bit. Help out.
Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Knudsen?
It's really striking when you go through the budget, you can see the number of people who live alone in Paonia is much higher than the state average, and the number of seniors who live alone is much higher than state average. So your request to the community to go out and reach out to people, especially those that live alone, is really timely.
Thank you. Okay. Public Works report.
I submitted the report. The only other project that we didn't put on there is we tried to straighten up a little bit between second and grants today. Wasn't the fix that we wanted to do, but it should make it a little smoother driving through there. And hopefully we'll hold up until we can get a permanent fix in, and if not, we'll do better at maintaining it the best we can.
Question for Mr. Hennifer from the board? Yes, Mr.
First, I wanted to also add to trustee Knutson's thank you for our tour yesterday. I think 5 of us, mayor and 4 trustees, I think, took a tour of the Public Works building and the Public Works building at Apple Valley Park, the one that was run into by a car. And I just want to thank you so much. It helped to see everything and understand so much more about, you know, just what the condition is, how things look great in the Public Works building. And same thing with the police tour, because we had talked about the need for another room. I didn't understand it till I saw it. So it was very helpful. Thank you to both of you and Cindy for the tour of the building as well. Very, very helpful, since we have decisions to make and I felt like I was doing it in a vacuum. So thank you. And with that, I could stop. I just have a question on the report by Jeremiah, but I'll stop it.
Well, I guess Mr. Heiner is going to have to ask that because Jeremiah is not here.
The question I had was, it was nice to hear that under the water loss audit on page 28, that working with the Colorado Water Loss Initiative to validate the audit. First of all, it's great to hear there's such an initiative. I don't know anything about it. But the question I had was, do you know how that survey is being done? Is it through sound, hydrophone, or I don't?
I don't have that answer on that. Jordan or Jeremiah could probably answer that better.
I can respond to some of that. Basically, you look at how much meters we sell, how much water we sell through people's meters, and we look at how much is coming in between the two. There's a difference, and that's the loss. The loss rate that Jeremiah found is 48%. That matches pretty close to JDS's hydro is 40% something. But basically, between the treatment plant and the meter to the house, we're losing about half our water.
I did talk to Jordan a little bit today, and there is some possibility also that there is some design flaws at the plant and that meter, because there shouldn't be a 90 right before or after a meter, and that could be causing some discrepancies. So we should possibly look at putting another meter in further away that still encompasses all of that. But Jordan and Jeremiah both was in another meeting with that today, so that is still kind of coming into me as.
Yes.
That came up also at the AWC. There could be meter problems because we're under measuring. Some of them are really old. So we discussed about replacing parts of some of the major meters.
Yes, Mr.
I just was wondering if is there also an issue that water is literally being leaked out of pipes that we're not aware of? Or do you think it's more numbers problem?
We're late.
And the reason I asked that is very early on, it seems like in one of our tours, Jeremiah mentioned some sort of I think it was a sound system that could be used to listen for the leaks and actually start identifying it. I didn't know if that's anything this initiative looks into. That was kind of my other half of that. If anybody knows, if we can iron that out.
We actually, that was the way we detected the leaks when we had our 2019 water loss. When they brought the detection equipment over from the eastern slope, that's how we detected the 2 big leaks, was through that kind of equipment. Now we have some, I believe we have some of that, but it's not nearly the quality of what they brought over in 2019.
One of the problems with the sonic systems is that if we're anywhere close to the river, the sound of the river drowns out the data. So it doesn't cover all of our water area.
And also some of the water lines do go through wetlands. So that if there is a leak there, I don't know. We could find, you know, it's just kind of.
Just to add to the conversation, leaking pipes are a universal problem in water systems. It's not unique to us. Generally, it's less than 40%, closer to 20, I think is average. And it's one of the primary goals of any water improvement system, like process, is reducing those leaks over time. Just understanding that we're not alone here, and there's established process to make sure that these things are addressed, which is why I'm reading Fairline is doing for us. So that's excellent.
Yes. Ms. Whipper?
When we were having leaks before, I called Denver Water to ask them what an acceptable rate was, and they said anything under 10%, and they were doing 7%. So that's our target.
All right, anything else from the board? All right, anything from the public? All right, seeing none, let's move on to the public hearings for the 2023 budget. So we have, this is an open hearing. So I am going to open the hearing. This is a 2023 budget. First part of this is the staff presentation, and I'm turning this over to Ms. Jones.
Okay, thank you. You have been presented with the budget. We have had numerous work sessions to go over this. This draft includes some additional information. And I did have to, because of what Paige presented or questioned at the last meeting, I did go back and verify the calculations, and we were short. We weren't covering the reserves. And so I did add some additional revenue that I believe will come from water usage in the changes that have already been proposed. So the rates won't change, but I believe that I didn't capture all of the revenue. And so I did, I don't have that proved yet, but I do feel comfortable that we'll be close to that. And so that's the difference in those numbers. Everything else is the same.
Okay. So, questions from staff? I mean, the staff. No.
The board, is she asking herself questions?
Yeah, sure. All right, questions from the board. Yes, Mr. Markle.
What was the amount of that revenue discrepancy as you just mentioned?
$123,000.
And what page is that on?
113. The 107 that's in there was what was in there, and then I added the 123.6 to the reserves balance.
$123,600.
123,000.
Other questions from the board? Yeah.
I just have a question on page 99 of the packet. It's the building fund. And I just need some edification as to, it looks like actual plus 13 December. Actually, I take that back. So essentially, we had quite a bit more revenue than was budgeted, correct?
We have, yes.
And we had more revenue because there were more permits for the 1232-03.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I looked at this earlier today and I thought it was an overage, so my mistake. I have a couple more questions on certain pages, but I certainly don't want to
Why don't
monopolize.
you go ahead and go through your questions.
Let me look again and make sure my question's valid. So let's see, I am looking at page 101, general fund, public safety. And it is. I think I have to take it back. Like, let me look at 102, I'm sorry. Oh, no, did we overspend the public safety budget? Let me just look at this again. Did it come out okay? Could you explain, I still don't understand in the last two rows that are in gray on the same table on page 101, 102,853. Is that a difference?
That's what we would currently, if nothing else changed from where we were, that's what would go into reserves. And the 316 is the police department's reserve. Well, and we use that for the overall general fund reserve as well.
So the 102,853 is an unknown at this time, whether it can be a reserve.
Correct. It's not, it is not anticipated to be a reserve. It's just where we are at this moment, but we are expecting to spend.
For 2022.
Yes.
Right, thank you. Okay, my other question's on page 107. And it is the general fund. Second, okay. It is the general fund summary. So the 2022 actual to the actual plus December. I just am trying to just make sure I understand this. So in the very first row, the reserve is what is more than was anticipated.
The 980.
Yeah, 980
is the current-
too.
is per audit is the reserve amount. And then we will have a net change of all of the different departments. I'm expecting to add another 48,000 to the reserve to come to 1 million.
Okay. Then on the next row, so the general income, the actual plus December 13th is 1.3 million and we had budgeted for 2.04 million. So I'm just trying to understand. So we did not get as much income in the general fund as was budgeted for? Is that correct? Okay, so it's quite a bit, 700,000. Is that because of reserves?
No, we didn't get, so we didn't get the money for the, each department is for the most part, is a little short, I believe. I don't think it's not a single item that I can think of.
Do you think it was less sales tax?
No, our sales tax is up.
That's what I thought. That seemed like
Part of it is, we didn't get the revenue for the skate park and that's 460,000 right there. Cause it didn't happen yet.
Okay.
That's the only big number that I can think of.
Okay. Thank you. And just on
And
the,
we haven't done any of the transfers for the street projects either because we're not doing them. So that's an additional 300,000 or 400,000.
and so the general expense, the next line under that, the 1.28 million, which is quite a bit less than what was budgeted to be expended. So are we?
Same reasons.
Yeah, just those things didn't get spent. Okay, great, thank you. And then I now understand the bridge reserve, very unassigned fund balance which is the first line under the intermediate size bold line.
which,
I'm at the bottom of the table now. Looking at the unassigned fund balance, and the first column is 391,273. So mostly, I just want to really understand what that means. So is that essentially,
so
Reserves.
if you take the reserves and then you take out the things that we have to reserve for. So like the
Tabor.
bridge and for the Tabor,
Mhm.
then you're left, what's left is unassigned, which can be used.
so that was our budgeted 391, and right now, the actual is quite a bit higher. And that's again because of all the same money that changed the upper expense income. That's still there, the 460 plus the bridge, okay, and then you're budgeting 755, all right. And ideally, the 382,549 for the 10%. We have to hold back, I can't think, is that more where?
We should be at 956, but we will end up at 755. So we're a little short of our 25% target. But part of that is that we are trying to do that very large street project, and that is using reserves. So we know where that is an intentional use, so it leaves us in a still acceptable position.
Thank you. So my last question is on 118, the sewer fund summary. And my question was explain. Oh, again, for me, it's the ending reserve. So let me get to the 668,912 is, so in this case, you're assuming the beginning reserve will be the ending reserve in the sewer summary.
We're budgeting for a 668,000 ending reserve. We will, after you take out the things that we have to reserve, we would be left with 271, which could be used that's what we're gonna use for matching funds at some point.
Okay. And so there may be some unassigned remaining, but and is that the three numbers that are in the rightmost column, the 77,829?
That is the recommended, or that's again, the 10%, 25%
Okay.
and 50%. And so that's just a measure, so a tool.
Thank you. It didn't have the percentages next to it, so I just didn't know if the enterprise.
In a column.
Okay. Well, I just didn't know if the enterprise funds had something different associated with this, but it's the same. Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions? From you? All right, seeing none, I am going to open it up for public comment. The rules for public comment are 3 minutes each per speaker. Speakers shall come forward to the podium and identify themselves by name and address. Repetitious comments will not be acceptable. If a previous speaker has already made your point, you may simply come forward and state that you concur. No public demonstrations of any kind, applause or otherwise, will be permitted or tolerated. Who would like to ask questions, make comments about the budget? Yeah, Ms. Patterson.
Patterson, Second Street. I have a question, packet page 40. So there's a budget summary there, and I first want to say I really appreciate that summary exists. I think that's handy to be able to see at a glance why things are changing on the revenue side. But I have a question under the public safety. It's the third fund down on that summary. I'm wondering why the auto tax increase was applied to public safety rather than to streets.
Ms. Ferguson, I mean, Joan. We switched to papers.
In the chart you're talking about, right? The summary chart, packet page 40, and it's also in the introduction. Sorry?
It's Senate budget book.
So the SO auto tax, or auto tax is not the one you're talking about?
Yeah, the auto tax increase, and sorry, it's also pretty hard to read.
Because that's just, it's just all general fund money, but back quite a few years ago, we were asked to divide it so that each department was its own company. And so, at that time, we assigned revenue to different departments, and that, because the traffic and such, the auto tax, which is the sales tax on when anybody in town buys a vehicle, that's what that comes from. And so that's why it got chose to be part of funding the police department.
Anything else from the public? Yes, Ms. Watson.
Suzanne Watson, Second Street. So I'm wondering, what's going on with the building department? You were hiring a contractor, Dan Vernon, California Corporation, Shumcota. And one of the issues was it's a lot more expensive than it needs to be. Because it was, corporate, you know, we were paying this outside entity. And, one of the issues is he was charging fees that you guys don't have on your fee schedule. So are you planning on creating a whole new set of building fees to compensate for the ones that you're not going to be getting when you take this in-house? And so I'm kind of wondering why, I was hoping the cost of the building program would go down a little bit when you start collaborating with Delta. And that's not really what I'm seeing in the budget. And I'd like you to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Watson.
I also want to know exactly, how are you making your deliberations and what's the procedure that's being followed here? What's the procedure and the process that's expected of the public when they comment? Because I read the packet and there was no explanation about how these hearings work. And I was wondering if you know how they work. Thanks.
Anyone else from the public? All right, hearing none, I am closing the hearing. All right, discussion by the board. All right, so the discussion is, do we accept the budget or no? Because we will have another formal acceptance of the budget later on at another meeting. But yes, Mr. Marshall.
Yeah. Well, just to start, I think that in order to have, because I haven't seen the budget in this format before, this is the first time we've seen it like this, correct?
Well, we've
I've
seen
seen the
all the
numbers.
pieces. We've seen
Right.
all the
Yeah,
pieces.
but this is
before.
like the
Putting it
comprehensive pack, yeah. I'd like to see this in a, not a scan format because it's not very legible and not searchable. And makes it hard to find and read what I'm looking at in general. So for whichever subsequent, whenever we actually approve this, I would like to see it in PDF format, not scanned. Just printed to PDF. Before I like to finalize it. Beyond that, I mean, the numbers we've gone over the numbers. Assuming obviously I haven't gone back and compared what we have here to what we have before. I trust that they're the same. The content of the opening. I just feel like these things are unnecessarily verbose I'd rather get right to the meat of the budget itself. I don't understand why, you know, all the stuff about like the coal miners, protective association chasing sheep off a cliff, like. Can we cut that out? Is that necessary?
I do not know, sir.
Yeah, if we can scrap the. What are we looking at pages here?
Yes, Ms. Jones?
Well, that information is for, not, this budget isn't just for you, it's for other entities as well. And those things, speak to the condition of the economy around here and what Paonia has to offer, which is what brings, tourists and stuff to town, which absolutely affects our economy. Also, the coal mines absolutely affect our economy. We saw when the other two closed down, the impact that it had on the town. So all those pieces go together in building a budget. And that's why those things are in there, because it is information not just for the board, but for public, our entities that fund us, and for bonding entities that have funded us. And so these reports are used for multiple things besides just the approval from the board. They're used for funders, for investors, etc. And so that is why that information is in.
I understand. I think that this is probably not the appropriate place to advertise town. I mean, I know that, okay, yeah, people are interested in the history of Paonia. But unless it's really like, I mean, this is like a state document, and whatever grants or funding sources that we need to go to, they get their own narratives. Hopefully that are put together a little bit more concisely than this stuff. So I'd like to take out pages. Which is part of this.
Mr. Markle, I would suggest before you make a motion, I would suggest you look at other towns' budgets
Okay.
before we start chopping and hacking this budget to pieces.
I'll take your suggestion under advisement. I mean that we right, pages 14 through 21 in the budget book 2023.
You have a second. Second. Discussion by the board.
I second it so we can have a little discussion. So I'm just now looking at the ClearGov 2022 budget. And pretty much all this information is in there under the introduction. It's just broken up into different sections. I can't tell if it's how duplicative it is. So, and I'm bringing this up.
What's in here is in, most of what's in here is in ClearGov minus the employee, the payroll portion and the actual spreadsheets. Those have not been added to ClearGov yet, but the rest of it is is being updated in ClearGov.
Yeah, and the reason I bring it up is, for one thing, this looks pretty messy the way it was presented because it's all a copy. But when you go to ClearGov, it is broken up into distinct sections, which are much more readable. Therefore, I'm okay with it if we continue with ClearGov. And that's.
If you look at the 2022 budget, what we will get, the reason that this is the way it is because we had to cut and paste pieces. We didn't get the whole 220 some odd pages of the budget, as is indicated in the very first index of what the budget is. We only got the relevant pieces. Mm-hmm. If you look at the 2022 budget, you will see that we have this stuff. If you look at other communities, this is exactly the same kind of format you find in other communities. This is not an aberration. Yes.
COLA provides a checklist of items that are supposed to be included in. There are recommendations and there are requirements. And we are, at this time, we are doing both recommendations and not all of them, but we do I try to do the majority of the recommendations as well as the requests.
And for example, our new town interim administrator asked for our budget, our proposed 2023 and our 2022 budget. Yes.
Well, and the reason I bring it up is because what doesn't look very user-friendly in our packet tonight is much more user-friendly and clear.
Absolutely.
So that's my point, and I wanted to second the motion just to make it clear that this is information that has already been provided in the past. It might be have more embellishment this go around. I haven't prepared.
It will look much better when we get the final document.
And so I would only throw out there because I would like us to talk about ClearGov in our next year, whether we want to continue with it if we're using it. So if we weren't using ClearGov, which is a much prettier way to look at things than this continuous document, then we might think differently. And I don't know what the state requires versus everything in here, but I would not vote for this motion because I think the information looks better when it's actually presented after the acceptance of the budget.
Before I came on the board, I went through a couple of years worth of budget, 200-page budgets, and found them so unwieldy as to be unusable. What would be good would be to have this style of budget, but also just have core financials in a spreadsheet kind of format accessible on the town website, because what's on there right now, you just have to file. I almost wore out a scroll now button on my mouse trying to get through. So shrinking it down just for people that really want to get the numbers, it'd be good to have that on our webpage too.
Anything else from the board? Okay, from the public. Oh, I'm sorry.
I can speak to it, I guess. I kind of laid it out to begin, but I just looked up town of Superior, just a random town. And they do have similar general information page. They have a history of town and location of town, 2 pages. And I think that, okay, fine, like whatever, don't strike it. Strike it, redo it, but make it like, if our audience is our public, we need to speak about the budget in this rather than Top of the Rockies BMW rally, or Atlastus Solar Center. So I just think that it could take whatever, however many pages, so it's 5 pages, and take it down to 2 and rewrite it so that it reads more factually. I don't know, it just doesn't seem well put together at this point.
And it isn't, because again, it is cobbled together.
Thanks for your retort.
Yes, Ms. Jones?
Again, and the audience and the public are not the only people using this document. And again, DOLA and the other agencies have requirements.
Anything from the public? Yes, Ms. Walker.
I feel a little uncomfortable with the narrative because it seems so subjective and I don't really feel like it represents me personally. So I think every little detail you put in there with a description, it's basically opinion and it's not really backed up with facts. I'd like to see the facts. I'd like to see footnotes, if you will, if you want to put this kind of detail in it. But that being said, on page 47, named, although misspelled, for the vast array of peony flowers in the area, I'd like to point out you're still misspelling peony because it's P-E-O-N-Y, not P-E-O-N-I-E. So that should be corrected so we don't appear too ignorant. Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Paslin.
Thank you. I just wanted to emphasize my support of Trustee Smith's comment about having a spreadsheet version of the budget on your website. I think that would be so incredibly helpful so that both the board and the public can make more informed comments during your public hearings. We can actually look at the spreadsheet, look at numbers, look at calculations. That would make me very happy. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Darcy.
Christina Patterson, Price Road. I appreciate all the work that's gone into the budget, and I just wanted to direct you all to the Cedar Ridge budget. I've looked at a lot, Carbondale and Telluride and Ridgeway, but Cedar Ridge is like so efficient, so streamlined, and just want to, yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. We have a motion on the table to eliminate pages 14 through 21 of the budget. Any further discussion from the board? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion fails. All right. Ms. Jones Mr. Cotton Bias, can you tell me, do we need a motion to move forward on this or not? What is the next step?
Hi, Mayor. The board needs to approve the budget by December 15th, according to the statutes, by resolution or ordinance. That appears to be up to the board. If you want to address that again, then that is permissible per the statutes. But the board would like to adopt the budget, it would need to do so by resolution this evening. Resolutions can be made verbally, but my suggestion would be to have it in written form and have it presented at your next regular meeting.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
We have the budget approval scheduled for that single meeting we have in December,
Okay.
because we can't do it until we get the valuation
Oh, that's
from
true.
the county.
That's
We can't get the count, if we don't get that till the 1st of December, I'll have to make those adjustments, and then we will get the final budget for that meeting, which is, I believe, was originally set for the 14th
Yeah,
of December.
All right, thank you. All right. Let's move on then to unfinished business. First order of unfinished business is the revision to the town attorney contract. Mr. Cotton Bay, would you please fill us in on the changes to that, sir?
Yes. First, I want to say thank you to the board for approving the contract, our firm's contract at your last meeting. And unfortunately, I've discovered an issue and now I need to ask for a revision. When I provided the contract to our firm's president for signature, she had run into an issue recently on another contract where the insurer looked at the term of the contract and it didn't date back to the original date of the services beginning for a town or city that we're representing. So what we noticed in the contract previously approved by the board was that the date that the services commenced was listed as the appointment date, which, as you know, was at your October 25th meeting. Services begun under the engagement letter on September 14th. If the term were to remain as is, there could be a lapse of insurance coverage should an issue, if the town were to discover an error or omission in our legal services provided between September 14th and the appointment date. So unfortunately, we do have to ask for revision of the contract. As a showing good faith, we did revise the compensation paragraph to include a commitment that the firm would not increase rates more than once in any calendar year. That's something I said during your last meeting, but it hadn't made its way into the contract. So that's one other change that you'll see in the packet. In the packet, our proposed changes begin on page 137 and the previously approved contract, in case you'd like to compare the changes, is included beginning on page 140. Again, I apologize for the oversight, and please let me know if you have any questions or concerns.
All right, questions from the board for Mr. Cotton?
No concerns, but I appreciate that you're willing to clear that up. And I like the fact that we got a red line document and then the actual document we're going to approve. And so that makes it really easy for us to look at what were the changes and then to move ahead with what we have.
Anything else from the board? All right. I would like to point out to the board, yes, there is a mistake on the final document and that the attest was not changed to the deputy clerk, but that will be changed. All right, yes.
So we make a motion on this?
Yes, please.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the amended contract with the town attorney and that we change the attest to show the deputy clerk.
All right.
Second.
All right, any further discussion from the board? All right, anything from the public? All right, we have a motion and a second to accept the revision to the town attorney contract. All in favor? Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, next on new business is Norfolk Valley Creative Coalition Holiday Art Fair Extended Street Closure. Okay. Would you guys like to come up and say anything to the board? I think you have included the letter to the board that was perhaps eliminated from the packet. But
Which letter? Sorry.
oh, yeah, it was a letter that was sent to the board from, I think Susie, did you send it to the board? Or-
Notification? It was the letter to businesses and you
Yes.
CC'd on it.
Yes,
But
yes,
that was the second time.
Yeah, right.
And so,
all right. So,
we don't, I mean, it's on the packet.
Yep.
We haven't really spoken to you since Mountain Harvest Festival, but I think we all know what a success that was. And the Holiday Art Fair's been going on for 30 years. We brought it outdoors during COVID and it was a huge success. We were able to accommodate a lot more of our members. We've had a huge, overwhelming response of applicants this year, almost double of what we had last year. Last year we had 40. This year we had 73 applicants, which is pretty tremendous. Entries, of course, we can't accommodate that many, but we're really excited about continuing outdoors. People love that, even with the COVID changes. So I think everything you need is there in the packet. Most importantly is the event itself is 5 hours. So business hours for the makers is from 10 till 4. But it takes us longer than that to set up and get everybody situated safely. So that's why the hours are as they are. People start to roll in and set up at 8, open by 10, and then we have it's a lot quicker on the way out. Usually only takes about an hour for everybody. So I know more events happening that day besides just the art fair. We'll have gingerbread houses here. Oh yeah. We'll have arts and crafts in Polis Park. The library has a book sale. Blue Sage is having a puppet show. Some of our downtown businesses are having holiday sales and deals. So we're really trying to include the entire community, nonprofit sector participating as well. So, and we've sent out the email to businesses twice. We did not go around and take signatures this time because that is not a specific requirement from you all. It says to notify the businesses, which we did.
all right, questions from the board? Yes.
I only have a question. It is, I don't see why this is even in front of us. We have no authority. We don't need to approve this. It was already approved by the administrator because it's already been scheduled. It's already been advertised. We have no say in this. So
Well, actually, we're still working with the old street closure packet, which exceeds the 5 hour limit, which is what all the controversy was about with Mountain Harvest.
We still haven't changed the ordinance, so we still have to.
no, there is no place for us to approve anything. It's the administrator, the mayor, and the mayor pro tem. We have no say in street closures. The ordinance hasn't changed. We're proposing to change it, but it's not been changed. So to me, it's okay. If the administrator approved it,
Even though the hours exceed the
Yeah.
ordinance.
it doesn't matter
Okay.
because she has,
All right, let's get a motion on the table to go ahead and approve this and then we can discuss. Would somebody like to make a motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion. We approve the request of the GP Creative Coalition.
Yeah.
For street closure on whatever the date is here.
Yeah. All right.
Finding is here.
December
December
3rd.
third.
All right, do I have a second?
So,
All right, discussion from the board? Yeah, Mr. Ryan.
my problem with this, I'd be happy to approve it, even though as Paige says, it really should never even come to the board, but it violates an ordinance 11-1-80. And a previous lawyer we had said that it was okay for the town board to violate its own ordinances because it's just administrative stuff. Like to ask Nick what his opinion is, whether the board can actually approve something that violates one of their ordinances.
Yeah, Mr. Guys?
Sure. Yeah, I typically don't believe that that's the case, that the board can by motion in effect amend one of its ordinances. There's something called the dignity doctrine, which basically serves for the principle that an ordinance can be amended only by a subsequent ordinance. The board, I haven't reviewed this ordinance specifically, so I can't comment on whether the board is authorized by other means to waive this particular requirement that you're referring to, but the board cannot violate its ordinances by simple motion. So I'd be
Does the board make a variance to your ordinance? No.
I believe, okay, my understanding of Mr. Conklin was that according to state law, we have the ability to supersede something. And I cannot remember what that specifically was. And at this point,
We call it police powers.
I don't believe that was exactly what he said.
I think one thing I can comment on as far as police powers go is that this ordinance that's codified in the town code was passed pursuant to the town's police powers. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the town has authority to then, the board has authority to then waive the requirements of its ordinances. I'd be happy to comment more specifically on the question that the board is asking. I could just have a little bit more information about what exactly the requirement that the application potentially violates is.
Yeah.
So the ordinance states that streets cannot be closed for more than 5 hours, Monday through Saturday. They can be closed longer on Sundays and holidays. This is on a Saturday. And there is no provision in the ordinance for the board to make an exception or a variance. And so that's what we're talking about.
Thank you for that.
-1-80, if you have it there in the Muni code, it's real short, you can look at it.
11, yeah, I'm pulling that up right now. Okay, yeah, it is straightforward. One thing I've noticed that if the board did want to approve this recently, let me ask a couple questions. Recently included in the packet was a potential amendment that the board was considering.
Yes.
And it would have potentially extended these hours or allowed the board some discretion in allowing closures to occur for more than 5 hours in duration. Is that right?
Correct.
So the board could decide to rely on what's called the pending ordinance doctrine. If the board is reasonably certain that the board will pass an ordinance soon, since one's already been included in the packet, or at least a potential amendment has already been included in the packet, and the board is reasonably certain that that ordinance will gain support from the majority of the board sufficient for its passage, then the board here could rely on that, the pending ordinance doctrine to allow the street closure to exceed 5 hours in duration.
Well, I don't know about the rest of the board, but it seems to me there was a lot of support for that the last time it came up. And that in fact, it was just sent to committee to finish up the final with the input from the organizations in town that would use the street closure. So I suspect it will pass. It just needs to go through the committee to finish up the ordinance. Yeah,
If I could clarify, I know there were some provisions in there that were not, I certainly didn't agree with them. And I just haven't had a chance to create some new ordinance, but I absolutely will not approve that one that was provided. Because it puts it back in our laps. There's no reason for the trustees to have it in our lap.
but it seems like it's going to be some variance is going to be approved that will allow for street closures that are longer than 5 hours. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that.
Yeah. So it seems like, yes, Mr. Mark.
Okay, how about this? Could we, we're looking at 10 to 4 right now, right?
Those are just the hours of operation.
Right.
The closure would be
2
from
hours.
8 till 5.
2 hours before and 1 after, assume that.
Right.
Okay, could you do it? Could you shut it down, so like, could you narrow the window some, like?
They're really, we've done it from 10 to 4 in the past specifically because with the daylight changes, it gets colder out there and it's dark. So that's the biggest one. So we really try to thread the needle on getting people safely loaded out and move them along as quickly as possible. I mean, an hour is pretty impressive exit. The morning, it does take, I mean, when you have that many vendors moving in and out cars, setting up kids area, et cetera, we really just want to do it as safely as possible. And sometimes there's cars that linger, you got to get them out of there and chase them down. And there's other kind of unforeseeables that are out of our control. So the 2 hours, we're hustling the whole time. It's a lot of work to get it happening that quickly.
Okay, so speaking of, for things out of your control, do you have a contingency for weather?
We're gonna do it. So there was I did ask in the original packet, there was an email to Corinne about, asking for plowing, should it be needed, asking for the town bathrooms to be open, which they already would be for gingerbread. And there's the decorations are always up by that time usually. So those were some reminders that we communicated with her about. So that's something she does, that's been gone out for several years. So it's not anything out of the ordinary. But if it snows, we're still doing it. That's part of, it's the holidays. People set up outside in the winter for Christmas since the beginning of time. It's not something that would prevent us from doing the festival.
So, Mr. Cotton Bias, if we were to use the pending ordinance doctrine, how would the motion be formulated?
The motion doesn't specifically need to contain a reference to the pending ordinance doctrine. The board could simply move to approve the application for street closure, and the record would suffice to establish the board's reliance on the pending ordinance doctrine.
Okay, and that we would just need to move this forward probably as quickly as we could.
Yes, that's correct, Mayor.
Okay,
So I make a motion to amend motion to make the street closure compliant with 11-1-8.
all right, we have a second on that motion. All right, hearing no second, that amendment fails. So we have a motion on the table to approve the street closure for Saturday, December 3rd. Any input from the audience? Yes, Ms. Watt.
I'm wondering if you're forgetting, along with the street closure permit, you should probably require a large event park permit for Polis Park. It says 300 people in the street closure, and they're also going to be using Polis Park, and we do have an ordinance requiring payment for the use of a park with a large event. Thank you.
Okay, anything else on the public?
That or no?
Yes, anything else? Yes, Mr. Zimmer.
Just wondering what the big concern about the 5-hour period is, why that's so pivotal. If you look at the last street closure, it was wildly successful for all of the businesses, and that would be one of the primary objectives of closing the street. So I don't know what the big issue of 5 hours or 6 hours or 7 hours, but it's good for the downtown. So it seems like either increment would be worthwhile.
I agree with you on that.
Mr. Sir,
I know. I just want to
you will wait to be recognized by the chair.
recognized by the chair.
Mr. Webb.
All right. So the 5 hours just happens to be the law. I'd be happy to change that law to accommodate you guys. But when I took the oath of office, had 3 parts to the oath of office: uphold the Constitution of the United States, Constitution of the State of Colorado, and the Paonia laws. And it's just the law. So that's
Well,
why.
I appreciate that, and that's
All right, we're not gonna have a back and forth.
well,
No, we're not gonna have a back and forth. And I'm sorry, what we say at the beginning of the meeting is if you have questions or we answered later. So we're not gonna have a discussion back and forth.
I was gonna be at home.
I'd be glad to hear it.
Thank you.
That's kind of ridiculous. Sorry.
All right. All right, we have a motion and a second on the table to accept the street closure. All in favor? Said aye. One aye.
Aye.
You have 1 aye. 2 ayes.
I abstain.
You have an abstention.
Yeah, I don't think we have the authority to do it based on. On law. I mean,
Is it an aye or? Aye or nay?
it's a abstain, yeah. No.
Okay, we have 2 abstentions, 2 ayes. Okay, 2 ayes. Nays,
One.
1. That motion passes. All right. Moving on to the next item. We have the 223 Grand Avenue balcony encroachment legal business. Does the board wish to go into executive session on this? Or does the board wish to take any action on this whatsoever? Yes, Mr. Weber.
I thought the memorandum from Nick was really good, laid it out, and basically was
Okay,
handled.
if you have discussions, please take them outside. Thank you. All right, thank you.
And he basically said mistakes were made in the approval process, but it's so far along, we're just a lawsuit, let's just go ahead and let it go.
Okay,
That's his conclusion. Unless Nick feels that there's some need for an executive session, I thought he had it summarized really well.
okay, yes, Mr. Weber.
I concur with those comments.
Okay, Ms. Smith?
I think I would like to go into executive session because it was not a slam dunk
Okay,
in my mind.
all right, well, we can move to go into executive session and vote yea or nay on it.
Okay, I move that we go into executive session pursuant to CRS section 24.64024B for a conference with the town attorney for purposes of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions pertaining to land use and building approvals and for use of public right of way, specifically regarding 223 Grand Avenue encroachment.
All right, all in favor?
Maria was asking first.
Oh, a second, I'm sorry. Second? Second, all right, all discussion? All right, all, yeah,
I do think that it would be good to talk about this. So even though there may be feelings of firm knowledge or understanding, there may be subtleties or positions that we have not thoroughly understood from our attorney, which you may be able to clarify, but only in executive session.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
All right, motion passes. We are going into executive. Oh, that's true. We need more than just a simple majority to go into executive session. Is that correct, Mr. Bay? All right, we don't have more than a simple, so we're not going into executive session. All right, so we are finished with that statement. We are not going into executive session.
Can't we make a motion then?
Sure, make a motion.
So you've tied my hands to make a motion based on attorney-client privilege.
Correct.
We would do that we would do that coming out of executive session anyways. So without the executive session, you're still at the point where if you need a motion, you would do.
All right, then hang on a second. Let me find his memo. Hang on, wrong email.
Memorized it yet? Jeez.
I want to read from it. Can I read from this?
I don't know. It should, I think would the board would have to approve that to be allowed to be released to public knowledge because it is under attorney-client privilege. Is that at this point? Is that correct, Mr. Bay? Cotton Bays?
That's correct. The board is the holder of the attorney privilege. Yeah, I think general questions, I think you can ask general questions about the issues in the memo without waiving attorney-client privilege for the entire memo. I think in asking those questions, I would advise board members to be careful not to raise any issues that might compromise the position of the town, however.
Well, at this point, the town, right now, we are going to do nothing. Correct. So I would like to make a motion that we require the project owner to enter into an encroachment license agreement containing terms and conditions to protective of the town, indemnification, insurance, temporary removal, or encroachment for town projects.
All right, would you repeat that again?
I would like to make a motion that we attempt to require the project owner to.
That's coming out of the memo itself.
There's bits and pieces.
All
I
right,
would like to instruct our attorney.
all right.
Can't do it?
No,
I second that motion.
but, all right, no, I need to make sure that I get the verbiage correct. So I'm going to, let me open a Word doc or a document on which I can type this out
Okay.
so that I have the verbiage correct.
Well, I'll modify slightly, but
Well, this comes directly out of the memo, Mr. Kelly Bias, Mr. Bias.
Could you make sure you read this?
well, can
I'm going to ask him if we can take this directly out of his piece.
Mayor, that advice in the conclusion of the memo, I think is, I do continue to recommend that. And I think that making that information public is not going to compromise the position of the.
All right, then let me just go to my email and pull that up and I can.
Okay. Do you need a date?
That might be. Hold on.
Is 11/5.
Madam Mayor, can we take a 5-minute recess?
Sure, I think that would be a really good idea right now. And that would allow me time to get all my pieces together. All right, all in favor? All right, we have a second.
Second recess.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. 5-minute recess to be back here at 7:55.
No. I did it.
I know.
Much better.
Okay, so.
All right, we'll call this meeting back to order. Right, ready here? All right. We have a motion on the table to have the attorney write up a document to require the project owner to enter into an encroachment license agreement, encroachment license agreement containing terms and conditions to protect the town, e.g. for indemnification, insurance, temporary removal of encroachment for town projects, etc. And an amendment to the town code to address the issues of encroachment in town right of way moving forward. Do you want it?
Yes.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion from the board. Yes, Mr. Martin.
I don't know what this agreement's gonna look like, so I guess the motion is to have him draft it, right?
I would assume so.
Okay. I wish that we could have avoided all of this. This has proven to be incredibly expensive. I'm sure it's very frustrating for the owners of the property, as well as the contractor and our building inspector. I would like to note that, in my personal opinion, the question never should have come up because it does violate the way that it's written and read. The structure violates building codes because part of the structure is under 8 feet. Where the clearance is 0, according to current input. So, once again, we have this giant building that's 2 stories tall over on, I guess it's Main. We have a non-conforming fence. We have this thing. We have residential use of buildings in commercial zones, all of which is due to management. None of this has anything to do with the board, or the public, but the board and the public are paying and suffering for all of it. And I am really looking forward to good management. I hope we can avoid problems like this moving forward.
And one thing else on the board? Yes, Mr. Weber.
Changing the rules, I don't think are gonna fix it because we have plenty of rules that weren't followed. So mistakes were made. I do think we need to clean up some things like you had talked about. Because we don't have any thing about encroachment now at all. It's just a kind of subtle interpretation of the building code. I'm in favor of that.
Okay, anything else before? Yeah.
I think the owners, from what I'm reading in the record, have been put through the ringer on this, and there were mistakes made, yes. But to add additional requirements and add additional fees, I think is just beyond me that we would do that. And I feel at this time that I agree with having to do something about the encroachments and getting something together that way is really important. But to have someone be given a permit to construct and then to try to add additional, after the permit's been issued, add additional pieces to it is a lot.
Yeah.
I'd like to point everyone back to what happened at Louis' private balcony. Somebody fell off and seriously injured someone below. And I am so concerned about activity on a private balcony directly above citizens walking down the street shopping. something could fall on them, some person could fall on them. It's unbelievable that we would have a public, the potential for people to sit out there and drop a beer bottle on somebody's head that's innocently walking down the street. That's why I would like to see some indemnification and some insurance provided if a innocent bystander is hurt by the activities of private people sitting in an open deck above public property.
Mr. Valentine, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No.
All right. Public. Ladies, would you like to add anything? Now, this is your chance. You might as well take your chance.
We're very confused about it. We wrote a letter. I don't know if you all received that and read that. So that's kind of where we're coming from. So we were here tonight to understand kind of why we're here. Which we're still confused about.
We're still confused.
And
Every
this motion doesn't-
Friday.
Yeah.
Friday is the first time we heard that we're even having a situation, so that we really didn't have time to gather any information and guidance from
Legal advice.
legal advice or any, I mean, we looked through our own things, because we thought it was finished, and we didn't realize it was going to maybe be try to overturn what we thought was completely in good faith.
Basically, should we read our letters so the public can hear what we had to say?
Yes, if you would like to, yes.
So I just think we can't really say a lot until we hear what you guys.
Yeah, I just need to hear what you have to say, then we have to go do our duty.
Yeah.
It's kind of where we're coming from. Because we can't accept
Yeah.
a reversal of what we've already been going through and have been through all this for 2 years. So that's kind of where we're coming from. Maybe we just leave it at that, trying to understand better where you're coming from.
And hoping we can just go forward.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anything else from the public? Yes, Ms. Patterson.
Michelle Patterson, Second Street. Again, you guys are in a difficult situation here, and there's no good way out of it. This is not going to be good for the town. This is not going to be good for the property owner. It's incredibly unfortunate, and this is at least the fourth time this has happened with real estate in the last 3 years. So as Trustee Weber said, you guys took an oath to follow the law. And that's just not happening in any consistent way here. You have rules that are being broken, laws that are being broken. I think either you need to really prioritize reviewing your code, reviewing enforcement of your code, making sure it's clear and making sure you can be consistent, or scrap it. Maybe we shouldn't have a town code if we can't follow it consistently and fairly for the benefit of all members of the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Zimmer.
Just to make the point again that this is like the third go round on this. And so they were given permission and then it was revoked and they were given and it was revoked and they were given again. They changed what they were doing to be in compliance with the building code. Because it's at 12 feet, it's above 12 feet. So you're allowed to have 4-foot encroachment over public space. That is the building code. So if you disagree, you need to show me that. And it was said that there's nothing in the code specifically about encroachment. So retroactively to make these people suffer for something you're not happy about in your code is not right. It's just not right. And you were told months ago that if you have an issue with the way the code is being interpreted, clean up the code. You've not done that. So, you know, you can't just keep waiting for the mistakes and then make some retroactive response to fix what you think is wrong. Be proactive and correct what you want to correct. But to make these people suffer now and pay more money is not fair. They already bought material to do a 7-foot deck, which was approved. And then they were told, in fact, that's not possible. So they shrunk it. So now they've got half of the material that they paid for that they can't use. So it's just not cool. It's not fair. And you have to take responsibility for the town having said it was okay and in good faith, they moved ahead. You have to take responsibility and it's not fair to punish these people. Not cool.
Watson?
I seem to remember Sam Light saying that CIRSA covers ineptitude. Because otherwise towns would go bankrupt if they didn't. And what we're seeing is ineptitude on the former town administrator's part. She couldn't read the code. She didn't know what the zoning code was. She didn't know how it related to the town code, the building code. I'd like to point out, and we're being told chapter 32 in the International Building Code allows this. But if you look at 3201.3 other laws, it says, this is the encroachment, building and encroachment. Other laws, the provisions of this chapter shall not be construed to permit a violation of other laws or ordinances regulating the use and occupancy of public property. In our zoning code, the lot line setback for commercial is 0. It's not -4, it's not -8, it's 0. It's at the property line. Encroachments are not allowed except for eaves. I emailed you on that. It's in our zoning code. This is completely non-standard. We do have precedent in this town. In 2014, there was a construction on Poplar on the 300 block. It was the Dairy Berry House. And they built their porch. They encroached with this portico into the setback on their property, but it was into the setback area that was not allowed in the zoning code. And they were made to tear down what they had put up and move it back to an acceptable position. So there has been precedent where people have had to move things. There, even though, and the building permit, the building inspector did give them a permit. And he misunderstood the setback. He thought it started at the curb, not the sidewalk. So he was ignorant to that and he made a mistake. And I feel very uncomfortable that this is happening. I'm on the zoning board of adjustment. Zoning board of adjustment does variances. And that's within the zoning code. And Corinne consistently ignored us. She preempted our authority and our power and board authority. And I'm very happy she's gone. She was a disaster for this town. This town is not big enough to absorb her mistakes. Thank you.
All right, anyone else? Yeah, Ms. Patterson.
I'm just wondering, what is it? Where did Dan Reardon weigh in on this? Was he superseded by what Corinne said, I'll take care of this, or where did Dan Reardon, what did he say about that balcony? Does anyone know?
We're not going to have it back and forth. If you want to have this discussion, take it out in the hall and you can have it out in the hall.
And so I guess that's horrible to absolutely know that Dan Reardon, there's a piece of paper that said Dan Reardon approves this. And everything structurally, everything about that balcony. And when you say the town approved this, the trustees were in the dark about this. And that was Corinne Ferguson that approved this and sort of superseded this over the trustees. And it sounds like even the owners of this building were sort of in the dark as to what was going on. And I just wonder why they didn't know what was going on. Who wasn't telling them what was going on? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Patterson.
During Patterson, Rio Grande. Is this balcony integral to a project? So integral that it becomes the focal point and there's no going back on it, or what? Is that such an important feature of your?
Please address the mayor.
Is it such an important feature that we're wasting all this time on it for a zoning thing? That was the call of current.
Anyone else? All right. We have a motion on the table to ask the town attorney to drop a document to require the project owner to enter into an encroachment license agreement containing terms and conditions to protect the town. For example, indemnification, insurance, temporary removal of encroachment for town projects, etc. And a recommendation for an amendment to the town code to address the issue of encroachments in town right of way. Any further discussion from the board? Yes, Mr. Weber.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Paige, this is the recommendation of our lawyer, correct? So there's one correct one.
Okay, anything else from the board? I tend to agree with Mr. Newton that, these women have been put through the ringer. And having to jump through another hoop after all of this, and to regret, we have to do something because we're gonna change the code. It seems ridiculous, but I don't get to vote on this, so. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
All right, that motion passes. All right, next on the agenda is Parks Committee County in Motion Master Plan Review. Yes, Mr. Knudsen.
We had promised trustee Markle that we would look over the Paonia in motion, and actually, in reality, what we've been doing is looking at the Paonia in motion every single time we've had a parks meeting. We've met in the various parks, we've looked at their recommendations, and we've done a written report to the board. We have not done anything as far as the overall Paonia in motion. And I think what trustee Markle was calling for was that as a board, we did not let Paonia in motion just kind of die and collect dust on a shelf. That there were some concerns that he has about that should be addressed in it. And I'd like to hear this. So that's where we are.
I apologize.
Mr. Markle, you have the floor.
Sorry, I don't have this as part of my packet.
They did not write the document up because they have written everything down. They have,
No, I mean, there's not an agenda item on,
well, then you don't have the latest packet because there it is. What?
Right.
Did you have stuff to insert?
No. Okay.
No, we didn't have anything.
I guess I missed this single line in the new business because there's not a thing about it. But I guess if this is our time for discussion, I can state my concerns in brief. The parts, what do we call it, PIM, Paonia motion, master plan, which I don't have in front of me because I was totally prepared for this, as I recall, has a couple of opening statements that are predicated upon raising property values as, or touts the increased property values that come along with increased park quality and the program. And one of our primary goals that we've stated as a board is that we need to encourage affordable housing. And those two are completely diametrically opposed. Those are the exact opposite things. So the work that we're doing in improving and gentrifying our parks, right? Improving and gentrifying our parks is working against affordable housing. Every dollar that we spend making a nicer trail and putting a fence around our dumpster and all of the concrete that we're pouring and everything that's included in that increases property values. And it makes it more expensive to live here. And if we want to create affordable housing, we have to find a way to prevent that from happening. So that's the crux of my concern. I could come up with a lot more detail if you want to continue the conversation in some fashion, but I appreciate the work and I agree that having nice parks is nice, you know, it's just there's a limit to how much money we can throw into the parks without making it too expensive for somebody to say, live in town and enjoy them. And the impetus for this conversation was when I attended one of the Paonia in motion meetings, whatever the get-togethers idea groups. There was a young couple from town who grew up in town, who hadn't considered that as an effect of that work. They were excited to see new parks, you know, and to see improvements. And I said, yeah, it's, you know, good. If you already own land here, you know, if you already own a house, And they're like, oh, yeah. I don't own the house, I live with my mom, and that's all we can afford. And as we were going through the approval process, that conversation popped up in my head. I think that it needs to be addressed. Beyond that, the amount of concrete, a lot of the environmental advantages that are named in there, I think are completely negated by the immense amounts of concrete that are planned to be put into our parks, as well as the observation station on Cedar Hill has like a giant pad up there. I think that it would be environmentally responsible of us to reduce the amount of concrete that we use, especially in our parks. It makes me absolutely fumingly furious to see a concrete pad be poured into what is supposed to be a natural area for us to enjoy, and it's being turned literally into a parking lot. And we have put more concrete in the parks in this town in the past 4 years than we've repaired in sidewalks by square footage. I guarantee it. That's most of what I had to say about it. I don't know where we go from there without doing document revisions, but how do you guys feel?
I actually agree with you on the concrete thing. I got a lot of feedback on Post Park being turned into Post parking lot. So it's about third and half concrete now, whereas it used to be usable space. Concrete's easy to maintain compared to grass. I think that's what was the driving factor, but beauty is a concept worth keeping.
Well, I'm hearing big concerns about affordable housing. I think we're all behind that. That was our main topic that came to us from the public when we had over 50 people here in this room talking about it. So anything that gets in the way of affordable housing, I think we have common ground on those things. As far as the pad that was poured by the playground, there was specific requests by parents to be able to have an area where they could observe their and we're required by ADA to have things that are accessible to wheelchair. Now, what Corey has done is said we don't have to do a concrete path all the way to that pad. We have these alternatives that are more natural and gravel that can still support a wheelchair. So that's what he's planning to bring into that. And we're watching that really closely in the park thing, because I agree with you. The concrete, I mean, in my own house, we tried to cut down on the amount of concrete, use brick or other things that are less damaging to the environment. So I hear the environmental concerns and I hear the housing concerns. We're not trying to make our parks into something you see in Telluride. So believe me, we're okay there.
How the draft look. But yeah, I heard that at the tour yesterday that we have geotechs or some more permeable, less invasive and more environmentally friendly walkway solution, which is great. And I wonder if maybe we could demo the stuff that we have in Polis Park and put that in there.
And I would like, as being part of the committee that put together Polis Park and the designs of Polis Park, that part of the money that came to fund that came from AARP. And again, it had to be it had to be ADA acceptable. Now, having had a husband who was in a wheelchair, who is in a very heavy wheelchair that he manipulated with a joystick, any of the things that we've been talking about, crush, fines, all of that, if they got wet, he could not go on that. And he would not have been able to access that park. He could now go out to Polis Park and enjoy that park. So it would not have been available for him. You could not have put the hopscotch thing out there for the kids in that park. So that park, even though there have been a very small segment of the community that has screamed bloody murder over Polis Park, it is much more beautiful now than it was in its state prior to being beautified. And we have gotten tons of actual comments that they like Pulse Park a whole lot better since it has been beautified. You may disagree with that, sir. But again, for ADA accessibility, my husband could get around this town a lot better now because we were riding up and down the streets of this town and he could not go in the parks of this town before he died.
Barry?
Yes, Mr. Weber.
I was part of the project that built the ADA accessible trail, Maroon Lake, near, Snowmass Aspen. And we did it all with crusher fines and it was totally legal. I was also part of
It's completely accessible.
yeah, it worked. You could get a wheelchair through it. It just has to be done properly and settled properly and a wheelchair will go. It was an engineered project.
Yeah. I didn't mention ADA. I think that it totally makes sense. I have handicapped relatives as well who make use of, have made use of all kinds of facilities. And I appreciate that the concrete can accept a wheelchair. Your interpretation of concrete as beautiful is entirely subjective. I think that, like Trustee Weber said, Gold's parking lot is pretty much what I see. And I know it was very expensive. I know that the money came from grants, AARP donated, it was money matched from town. Watched it happen. And all that effort could just have easily been placed to improve sidewalks, which are the only way that wheelchairs can access some parts of town. So I'm with you. I think that ADA access is very important. It should be maintained and incorporated wherever possible. But the fact is, concrete's really bad for the environment. The way that it's made, it uses incredible amounts of energy to create, to transport. Once it's there, it is really hard to take up. If a tree root tilts it, you got to deal with it, just like all of our sidewalks are, and it creates an impermeable surface, so it creates more water runoff, which is really bad for our water table. I'm just saying that there are better solutions out there, which I'm sure would suffice for all weights and sizes of wheelchairs, that we should consider as part of our plan moving forward.
And Mr. Markle,
Yes.
if my opinion of Pulse Park is subjective, then your opinion of Pulse Park is subjective.
Clearly.
That's what, thank you. Yes,
Madam Mayor, can we
Mr.
move on to the next agenda?
Yes, I would think that would be
invite anyone to join us for the parks committees as we move forward, because we also approve a budget every year that tells us what improvements we're making in the park, and that's really time to get in.
And I think your opinion is very, very important as we go forward with the master planning process. And I would heartily encourage you to take part in the master planning process and express those opinions.
Before moving on, right now we have the master plan as part of our ordinance. We accepted it as part of our plan, right?
No, the master plan.
Or no, I'm sorry, not the Pan Union motion plan was finalized and accepted by the board
It was.
as board policy, right? So right now, our board policy is to increase our property values.
That's your interpretation, sir.
That's as it's written in the plan.
All right. Yes, Miss.
So I'd like to,
I just want to say, we made a promise at some meeting that we would revisit Paonian motion at a scheduled time. So, and it was,
Yes.
well, no, I thought it was going to be March 2023.
No, we said we wanted to do it on a quarter. I'm sorry for not
Oh,
asking.
But let's maybe have a few, maybe add it to a next quarterly meeting and have some questions to be answered, because it looks like we have such a give and take here. And like you said, we only have so much money and we're going to have to decide what we can do with that.
Well, why don't we look at this after the beginning of the year? Let's get through all the stuff that we have to get through at the end of the year. Hoops we have to jump through and state requirements we have to deal with. So let's get through the end of the year with all our requirements. Beginning of the year is a good time to look at all of this.
Yeah, I don't know if you want a motion to actually make sure it happens, that we actually look at it again, like we promised.
I will put
think we
it on my
promised that,
list.
gentlemen.
I have a list of
Okay.
things for agendas. I will put it on my list for like the second meeting in January.
I would only ask that there be some concrete questions that need to be discussed in that I don't know what they are at this point. I'd have to look at paying you a motion, but we can't have this kind of conversation
I
again.
would agree.
I mean, solely because it is subjective and yeah, I don't know what we do with it. So there's some way to, yeah, I don't know.
Smart.
I move that the family unit in motion master plan be included in the second meeting in January
All right. Is there a
for
second
discussion and review.
discussion from the board?
Yeah, let's take some time to do it right, and not just run in circles, and I agree with Paige that we need to have some real concrete.
No pun intended.
All right.
It was intended, but not.
All right. All right, we have a motion and a second to put the family in motion plan on the second meeting in January. For the discussion from the board. Okay, from the public, yes, Ms. Watt.
I'm just wondering, where in the packet are you looking? Was it not included in the packet? And
It's only a single line on the package.
okay, well, where was it? Because I can't even get to it.
It's in the agenda. It's just on the agenda.
Oh, yeah, well, okay, so that's only like, okay, okay, so, and where's the master plan? Where can that be seen right now when you're discussing?
It's on the website. On the website.
The only emotions on it, but not the master.
Not the master plan,
And it is, it's called the comprehensive plan,
the concrete plan?
some comprehensive plan. Yeah, we're stuck in the rest of God, people.
I just wanted to say thank you to all the people who put in so much work on that Family in Motion project. And I was not a regular attendee of those, but I did really, the person who helped facilitate that was really open to discussion about building materials. And I'm sure there's a great combination of supplemental materials. I don't have concrete confirmation. But I just want to thank them for everything. I mean, it went on for months and months. There were tons of stakeholders that weighed in on it. I think just about every organization in town contributed something, threw something in the hat. And and I do love Bowles Park, and we use it for all of our events, and it's a great kids zone, family zone.
Thank you. Yeah, yes.
Something.
Choose.
I just wanted to mention, as Amy said, there were a lot of stakeholders, a lot of people in town were involved in this. I hope that you would consider inviting them to your meeting in June. Like NFTAG, some of the other groups who instrumental in putting together the plan in the first place, because they might be interested in participating in your next discussion about that. Thank you.
Okay, you have a motion and a second. We put the family in the motion plan at the second meeting in January. All in favor? Opposed? All right. That motion passes. Let's move on with Circe's optional coverages. We don't take all of these, but we do take some of them. Cindy, can you tell us what we usually take on these?
Usually, or we have been doing the excessive crime.
Which one?
Excessive
crime. I think we were doing the middle, the 2 million.
What page are you on?
Right here, so one.
156,
57.
57.
Thank you.
We did.
I believe we were doing the no fault water line rupture. And we have done the volunteer accident in the past. Oh, we don't have any volunteers at the moment, and we don't have any projects that we know of currently, that are, that we would have volunteers for, so I'm not sure I see it, personally, don't see a need for that one at this time, but that's up to the board.
All right, yes.
Actually, I'd like to make a motion about.
Yes, please.
So, first motion would be the $2 million excess crime coverage. I mean, the first part of the motion. is
Okay.
the, $2 million. The option 2 for no fault water line rupture. And I really want to add the volunteer coverage because a number of people in the community have wanted to be crews to help out. They've had difficulty getting a hold of the town and trying to get those things moving. And it'd be great to be more welcoming to volunteers to help us with projects, especially in parks. So those 3 things are.
Do you have a preference on the volunteer?
Which grade is it again? Graduated? Is it graduated or is it just? I thought it was just.
It's on page 166.
Yeah,
Seems like it was based on
Five.
type of.
Yeah. It's like-
It's just standard, it's just standard volunteer. I don't know if pages are.
It's,
Based on the number of volunteers, as I read it. So if we're gonna say we have 100 volunteers, then they're each covered at $2.48 each. So,
no, there's different varieties of volunteers.
well, yeah, there's volunteers, there's unelected appointed officials and unsworn rangers. But really what I think that we're talking about is like volunteer projects around town, cleanups and all that. Yeah. So as I read it, what they want us to do is figure out how many volunteers we're gonna have. And then that determines our premium.
Okay.
Is that correct, Cindy?
I can amend my motion for 25 volunteers.
I would say more than that. I would make.
Come on, man, believe in us.
Yeah, I would think it's 3 here and another. Yeah, I would make it 100. You know, because I was just thinking the Colorado grant that I wrote actually has volunteers.
And I know there's, the students are gonna be putting in the Apple Valley extension with Ben Graves, so.
But they're covered with school life.
Yeah, I think they are.
Yeah, Paige.
I was just gonna say, one of the big things that came up during the strategic planning session, and Corinne said, there was insurance for volunteers
Right.
at that time. So I'm assuming we had this, because people really wanted to be able to volunteer on projects. It came up again and again.
Yeah, so even 100 is what, 200? Yeah.
Yeah, also notes that the premiums will be adjusted by year-end audit based on actual usage of the program. So if we overshoot, we can just make a guess and adjust at the end of the year.
Yeah.
It does require some management though. To have this, we have to have the person
Sign off.
sign in. I mean, so we have to make sure that that the staff could do the management. And keep track that this has to be done.
All right, so what we have right now is we have a motion for $2 million on the crime option 2 on the water, and then the 100 total volunteers. Does that sound right? 50?
Yeah, 100 is an awful
We could
lot.
always change
Numbers
it.
not, we can
Okay,
change it.
so
later.
50 volunteers. All right, do I have a second?
I second you.
All right, discussion from the board? Yes, Mr. Michael?
One thing I noticed in the excess crime coverage plan, covers, faithful performance of duties coverage.
Say that again, please.
Faithful performance of duties coverage, page 158. Under coverage, the first thing is employee dishonesty, including faithful performance of duty coverage. I was wondering if we could figure out, I could probably just do this by email to the underwriter, but wonder what's included in that because I didn't really understand what that meant. And looked it up. It says crime policy losses arising out of the failure of an individual to faithfully execute duties required by company bylaws or prescribed by municipal laws. So I don't know if based on that, if it applies only to law enforcement or if it would cover other failure to discharge duties.
Well, it's employee dishonesty.
Right.
So that.
And then
seems like-
including faithful performance. So like, yeah, that's kind of my question.
Oh,
Like,
no, I
what
think it's-
does faithful performance and duties coverage entail?
I think in previous discussions that we've had in prior years, the whole Chesapeake investment, this was part of.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, they kind of have the fraud and
Right.
transfer and all
And
that.
so, yeah, so it would it would include all employees.
Okay.
And so if they're not faithfully discharging their duties,
Right.
any employee, so it's not just police. Okay, all right, anything else from the board? Anything from the public? Yes.
So are these coverages that we currently carry? Because I'm curious if this employee dishonesty, including faithful performance of duties, covers us now, can it cover Corinne's mistakes? And do we have to be afraid of people suing us if we're basically covered, if we have coverage up to $500,000?
Those are questions.
It was, yeah, I was trying to Steve. So I think before you start giving away town property, you really should look at our coverages that we have. With this balcony, for instance. Thank you.
All right, anything else? All right, anything else from the board? All right, all in favor of taking the $2 million prime option, the option number 2 on water, and covering 50 volunteers? All in favor? Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, next we have contract with the interim town administrator. We have a contract is included in the packet. Yes.
Sorry, there's a section related to this, on page 154, 155, but I'm not sure.
I'm sorry. 154, 155. Oh, the chart, is that what you're talking about?
Certificates of renewal.
I just, maybe I'm misreading it, but I thought that required a decision.
Yeah.
Okay, Cindy, can you indicate us on that chart and what that means? It's got other towns on it.
No, I have.
Because it's got Carbondale on it, it's got Los Animas, it's got Austin, it's got. Yeah.
So as I understand it, we have until the 22nd, November 22nd to approve this, which is our next meeting. So we need to get it done before then. So if we can check with our underwriter to see about the details of it. My understanding is this is a certificate of insurance for other entities beyond town. So this is the certificate holders, Wagner Rentals, liability additional insured property loss payee, the town of Paonia. So this is somebody in Carbondale, this company, Wagner Rentals on Dolores Way in Carbondale, holds a certificate required by contract. Property coverage includes physical damage. So these are other insurance policies that apply to us. So if we don't do business with these guys then anymore, then these policies no longer apply.
Right.
Right. So what we need to know is if we're going to be doing business with these guys in 2023.
USDA, we are not, that we did no longer are doing business with USDA, so that one does not need to be on there. We do business with the other three, but not, I don't.
Recording? I got it.
She knows the invoices we get for rentals.
So is this saying that we are, if we break something we're renting from them, we're covered? This insurance covers us breaking their stuff?
Okay, so we need to contact Sursa and get
Yeah.
clarification. Can you do that, Cindy, tomorrow? And so can we give her permission to renew this with the appropriate ones? Can we get a motion to that?
Make a motion that, the finance director. Are you gonna do it?
Well, no, we'll just do another motion, being that we have a motion already passed.
So you could do it either way. It accomplishes the same thing.
Just do a new motion.
Okay, so I move finance director, be, clarify with CIRSA the coverage for rental equipment that we have. And if she is satisfied with that, then she is authorized to, sign the agreement.
We had a motion on the floor, correct?
No, we passed it.
Pass it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
All right, so we have a second on that?
Second.
Discussion from the board? All right, anything from the public? All right, so we have a motion to allow the finance director to investigate this and make changes as necessary and approve it. All in favor? Opposed? All right, that motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Patterson, for pointing that out. All right, let's go ahead with the contract for the interim town administrator.
Now, Mayor, Yes. The interim town administrator that we selected, gave us a pretty much boilerplate contract from a previous, professional organization. That's what she was using when she served Crestone. And, our own attorney did look at that and made significant modifications to that protected the town a lot better, but also made the contract a lot more clear. So, that's the contract that we have right here. That's what has gone back and forth between the mayor and our interim administrators. That's what we want.
And so the interim administrator approves this as does our county. Yes, Mr. Markle.
Was that emailed to us?
Yes, previously. Yeah, I can answer. Or original.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, her original was,
Yes.
I remember seeing that, but the revisions by Nick.
This
Yeah,
is-
that's-
these are-
these
Yeah.
are they, but I mean, how did Dave know that? How come you didn't say that?
I didn't say what,
How are you privy to the changes?
because he was part of all of this.
Let me give context.
Yeah.
Thank you.
please.
The mayor was having some difficulty with the number of duties she had on her plate and asked me, since I have the HR background and negotiated contracts, to go in with the interim administrator and to at least get the contract finalized and take that task off her plate. And I agreed to do that, and that was done over the weekend.
Okay.
So that's why I know about that.
I guess as a general statement, my recollection was the motion was for the mayor to enter into negotiations with the interim administrator. Is that correct?
There were no negotiations.
Yeah.
That was the motion, correct?
Yes, it was.
Okay. So the direction of the board was for the mayor to enter into negotiations. Why is trustee Knudsen entering into negotiations?
Because I asked him, which is more expensive.
You do not have authority to undermine the board. Only the board can change the board's decision. Anybody else feel like something's out of order here?
Yeah, he's correct. Mayor answers to the board.
You know, I think technically it's probably correct, but given the time frame we're going through, I'm sorry, to me, it doesn't bother me. Simply because I have been behind the scenes talking to people, doing lots of things to get things done. So in this case, I think it was the best thing to do because I know the mayor's been doing a lot of things. Perhaps we should have gotten an email that she was going to give it to Dave perhaps, but in this case, I am not going to make a big deal of it and I really want us to approve this contract.
I'm not
And
saying that we don't approve the contract. This is a totally separate issue.
right. But maybe there should have been a
A
follow-up.
much larger, more important problem.
Well, all I have to say is, here is my candid response. If we really worried about our motions being put in place, we would have been screaming for the last 6 months because so many motions that we had made as a board were never taken care of.
I have been screaming for 6 months.
Yes, I know, but so much was not taken care of. Please let us get new management. I'm sorry that motion was not followed to the letter. But I don't think it, so let's do a pinky swear right here. That in the future, all of our motions will be followed. So, sorry.
I kind of feel like, municipal policy goes beyond pinky swear.
I know, I'm being
All due respect,
facetious.
I know, yeah, I get it, and you're being like lighthearted, but this is pretty serious, you know, and this isn't the first time, I mean, the exact same thing happened with the Pale Union motion, you know, the board moved, to put something on an agenda, and it was determined by a trustee. They've decided that it wasn't worth doing because there was other work to be done on that plan.
Are you talking about this one right now?
Yeah, back in September. It was supposed to be on the second meeting in September. The board. I mean, like, if we're not gonna follow our motions and hold ourselves to, we have no credibility.
What do you want
If
to
we
do?
don't,
What would you like to do?
I would
to
like-
rectify it?
I don't know. I
Want to pass a motion that we stick to our motions?
no. No, I think that's
Lack of redundancy.
I mean, we have been so usurped for so long.
Yeah.
It's time for a fresh start.
Just have a censure.
Shut. There is no comment from the public at this point in time. The public will be allowed to comment when the board makes a motion.
I have a question back to the original subject material.
Yes, please.
There was an email stating that an interim town administrator might be looking at $100,000 plus housing. Is that still realistic? That one was sticker shock to me. I was thinking,
No, that was a prorate. That was $100,000 salary, like for an annual salary. That-
yeah, it wasn't clear.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, that was my fault. That was my fault. Because I figured
I was
about
thinking
it.
I'd take the job at that point, but we're so close to having a real administrator. Aren't we just creating more dislocation in the system by going for an interim? I know I've made this argument before, and I'm approaching it again, that the board has approved acquiring an interim administrator, although the actual motion stated that we could can it at any time, right? We could pull the plug on it if we were that close to it. In other words, we didn't commit ourselves fully to an interim to actually hire him. What we said is that we would proceed with the process. That was the motion. And
We did.
there's also a staff issue here, is that if you bring an interim administrator in, staff's gonna have to train them. And then they're gone in a couple of months and the staff's back training the real administrator, you just double their workload. And so I'm thinking of staff on one side, I'm thinking of excess expense. Town could survive for a while without an administrator. During the French Revolution, Paris, government collapsed. For months, there was no government in Paris. There's no anarchy. Everything just functioned normally. Bakers baked bread.
And people's heads got cut off.
Well, no, that's a government heads. That's why there was no government. They chopped out and the ministers.
Way off the track.
What I'm saying is that the town can survive without an interim administrator. We're so close to picking an administrator.
Okay, we heard from numerous people again and again and again, and it's state folks advising us, the retired administrators who were on the screening committee say first, no, you can't. And when they heard we didn't have a clerk either, they were really distressed. So was Leslie. And the other is that it takes much longer than you think it will. So we didn't hear that, and that idea came up again and again, and it's a good idea, it's a valid point, but nobody thought that was going to, work out, favor.
Okay, accept that.
I was under the same impression that you had initially, like, can we get by without an administrator for a period of time? There were several things that changed my mind on that. First of all, looking at the task list that's ahead of us, knowing also how dicey recruiting is and how you can go through your candidates and all of a sudden you've got none. This happened to the town quite a while ago. And we ended up just picking whoever was still standing, which isn't the best thing for the town. We may not have to go back to the drawing board after this group of candidates that we have right now. We don't know that. When I saw the resume and when I heard from people like the Delta manager about the capabilities of this person that we're about to grant for an interim, that changed my mind. I said, you know, someone with expertise that can advise us that has done this before. And I don't know if you've had a chance to look at her resume. It's really strong. And so I have a lot of confidence in what she can bring to the table. I was also trying to be sensitive to the load that the mayor and other staff members felt without the administrative in place. So those are the things that changed my mind because I was in the same page.
And as the mayor, and what I have gone through in the last 5 days, and what I have tried to accomplish, and that I showed up at Mr. Knutson's house in tears, not being able to even imagine just taking on the load of calling the administrator to try and talk to her and do this, because I had so much going on that it just wasn't within my bandwidth to do that. I have 2 single-spaced legal sheets of things that I need to follow up on. And that's not even the minutia. Those are just the big topics I have to follow up on. And to have somebody who come in who understands grant writing and public systems and water and sewer systems to step in and start to pick up some of this stuff. To be able, and she doesn't have to train the staff. She doesn't have to know him. She knows systems. And to be able to run some of that stuff that I haven't a clue about, staff is going to have to train me. So it's ludicrous to try and operate this for God only knows how long with a person who is basically incompetent to run the town. And I am absolutely, I completely say I am incompetent to run the town as an administrator. Yes.
And I'd like to add that John and I visited with Leslie, and I'm sorry you weren't there for the interviews because she's amazing. And we met with her and yeah, she could read our minds. But the other thing is we have 2 incomplete applications for clerk. 2. And it ends on November 14th. So we don't have a clerk and we're not going to have a clerk. So this is the best thing we could do. And in my opinion, and having been completely part of this process from beginning to end, we have to have this person. But what?
You convinced me.
I'd like to do
To tag team.
I would just like, I think we need to get back to Thomas's original.
Let's take care of
Get this done.
let's take care of the contract. And then if you want to return to it, then we can return it. But let's take care of the contract.
I thought that, meeting with Leslie, right? She struck me as, extremely competent, sharp, shrewd, and capable, and very, very expensive. So let's not ignore that this, contract does come with a cost, right? And I understand that there's realities, you know, that hardly anybody's competent to run a town, right? That's a very rare set of skills, I think. And I believe that Leslie has them. And that comes with a cost. My primary concern is with the transportation. Because the way that this is going to actually work is she's going to drive here and we're going to put her up in a hotel for some days a week, I would imagine, to start probably for a full week.
No, she's coming for 2.
Okay, well, 2 days to start. But that's $1,000 or so. So if we're gonna do this, make sure that we get our money's worth. Okay. Let's listen to what she has to say, follow her advice, and make sure that we don't waste her time with minutia. Let her do her job and stay out of her way. Okay. Regarding specific terms of the contract. I would like to see a red line between what was here and changed previously, but I'm reading it since I didn't notice anything that stood out to me. I don't see anything to change.
Okay, can we get a motion to accept the contract?
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the contract with Leslie Klugmeyer as our interim administrator.
You got a second?
I'll second that.
Discussion from the board. All right, discussion from the public. Yes, yes.
I have a comment on sections 5, 6, and 12, part E of the contract. It's all lumped together. I just wanted to let you know what I'm looking at.
What's
so-
the page number?
170 and 171 of the packet. So looking at 12, section E, it says that she will be coming to, Leslie would be coming to Paonia for the regular board meetings. And then looking back at the costs associated with that, that's assuming you're using federal mileage rates, that's $725 for travel. That's I'm estimating $175 for lodging for that.
No, she has $50 in there.
50 and that's not in the contract. So I would recommend that you add that to the contract if there's a cap on that on lodging, because it's not there. And then based on just personnel costs, that's $255 for a 3-hour meeting. Guys. So that's a total cost of over $1,100 to attend one town meeting. I'm wondering if that's something that could be done remotely. Your attorney attends remotely. Could you write into the contract that she will also attend meetings remotely? And could you also consider what other job responsibilities she could complete remotely? Because you're looking at like 75% of your cost is to her travel and lodging, with the remainder being the actual hours worked. So I think you could have a much more reasonable contract if you could put some remote work into place for that. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else from the public? So, yes, Ms. Vaughn.
I was just looking at the timeframe of this contract, saying that it's for a minimum 2-month contract. I didn't think it was going to be that long. What's the plan for the permanent hiring? I mean, are you going to hold carrots in front of your applicants' noses and just keep pushing it out there and pushing out there? Because that's not fair. I don't think I've heard much discussion from this board about the process for the permanent hiring is. And so I understand the need for an interim or why you'd want an interim, but I know in the past we've had 3 months for an interim administrator, but in that 3-month period, they went through an actual hire and it only took 3 months. So now you're talking about 2 months for an interim. I would suggest that you change this to be month to month on a monthly basis. Because I think you're kind of tying your hands and you might be putting, and maybe you will do 2 months, but I'm just kind of wondering where you are with the permanent hire, because there's been a lot of silence around the actual process and planning. I kind of want to know what the plan is. That being said, I feel a little uncomfortable because it sounds at least like 3 trustees are involved in this hiring now. Is it 4 including the mayor? Is that kind of meeting territory you're in? Public meetings? I mean, you have the personnel committee, then you have the successory trustee in Knutson, and then you have the mayor. And they're all working on hiring various forms of administrators, and excluding Thomas Markle and Dave Weber. And I feel very uncomfortable with this. It's really by the seat of your pants. Thanks.
All right, we have anything else from the board? All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the town administrator. Yeah.
Someone else, I agree with some of the comments from the public there. I think that a 2-month contract and one that doesn't address or try to discourage travel, which I didn't realize was actually what a giant percentage of the thing it was. And it might actually save Leslie's time, you know, if we can lay that out, say, you'll be here these days.
Again, Mr. Markle. You
Again?
said that you wanted to not involve the minutia, let her do what she does. I think we are now saying, we're going to dictate to you when you're going to be here and what to do. I think we are going right back to minutia instead of letting her do what she does in the way that she does it.
Okay.
Yes.
I was just gonna say the one thing, because when we spoke with her, she definitely is gonna do things remotely. She's not gonna be here every week. We're gonna do as much remote as possible. If you remember the conversation with her, which we had in a executive session, which was publicly noticed. I just want you to know, everything's been publicly noticed during this process. So if you want to do anything, it might be to add, if we could put the word under number 9 on page 170. May schedule her hours, average 24 per week, including remote or in person. Because the word remote isn't here, but our understanding was in visiting, you know, in the interview with her, that she wants to do as much remote as possible.
Yeah.
Too. So that's not in here explicitly, and I don't know, Nick, if it's possible to add in. Well, no, we could make a motion to add the word including in person and remote in number 9. Maybe, I'm not sure where. Maybe right before IA may schedule her hours to include in-person and or remote to average at an average of 24 per week.
Is that an amendment? To the
Yeah.
motion?
Yeah, that's.
It would be an amendment to the motion. Yes.
I'll second that amendment.
Okay. Hours. What was it again?
I know.
I know. It
I may
came.
schedule her hours, maybe inside the first parentheses. We schedule her hours to include remote
On-site.
and or on-site to average. Does that work?
Or. Okay. You have a second on that?
I second it.
All right. Discussion from the board on that amendment?
I kind of feel like it's a token measure. My thinking was not necessarily to micromanage her time, but to indicate that we would prefer her to work remotely as well.
Again, we're dictating what she should do and
Yes.
she's the professional.
We have a right to dictate what we want.
Yes.
Yes, she is a professional. Yes, I respect her opinion, but if we can't afford for her to drive for 10 hours a week to come and show up, we should say that. I don't think that that's hypocritical of me to say that we should leave details to her, but tell her that we would like her to work remotely as much as possible.
Let me amend the amendment.
You can do that at item.
We can do that.
How's it right now?
To add remote and or on-site.
I move that replace and or on-site with as much as possible.
Work to, okay. All right, so we're going to change it to IA may schedule her hours, parentheses, remote as much as possible to average 24 hours.
So then.
Is there a second on that?
Second.
Discussion from the board on that amendment.
I think if you let her loose, she's just gonna try to do as much remote as she sees feasible. Probably shouldn't be just telling her how much to do it. She has no incentive to drive for it,
None whatsoever.
no matter how much money it makes.
It's actually, she's getting less per hour when she drives than she does when she's here. Or less per hour.
No, we're getting nothing when she drives. We're still
She's getting, yeah.
We're getting nothing when she drives.
All right. All right, so we have a motion to change the first sentence on 9 to read, IA may schedule her hours, open parentheses, remote as much as possible to average 24 hours per week. Correct?
Sounds good to me.
Any further discussion from the board on that revision? Yes, pass.
Thank you. I'd like to bring your attention again to 12 part B. This is on page 17. 12 part B specifically says that she will be on site for your regular board meetings and may perform other work remotely. So I would encourage you to consider revising that language so that she's not required to be here on site for every town meeting. That's the way the contract reads. And I would also remind you that Mayor Backren, you said that there is a limit on lodging that is not in your contract. So if you're going to apply a limit on what's reimbursed for lodging, that needs to be incorporated into the contract, and it is not there now. Thank you.
Well, let's take care of this amendment. And then we'll think about another. All in favor of the amendment to add remote as much as possible to number 9?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. Further amendments? Yes.
Just on, in response to Ms. Patterson's question, when we were interviewing her, she said she has done remote board meetings in the past and it hasn't worked out very well. So it was her preference to be here, but I don't know if it would necessarily be a bad thing to say. You know, could we try it one time or leave a little bit to discretion? You know, this is a big unknown. You know, we really have to be a little bit flexible here just to see how things are going to go. And plus, there's going to be times she can't get here physically because the roads have to be closed.
I mean, we have
So we're going to have to do, the chances are good out of the, you know, this is only what, November, December. So we have 4 meetings, in-person meetings. So the chances are good.
There's only actually
3.
Yeah.
We only have 3 meetings.
Right.
So frankly, 3 meetings by the end of January, I say let her be here. So when you think about it,
by the end of January.
if she, oh, is it end of January?
Yeah, because we have 2, we have 1 more in November, we have 1 in December, and then 2 in January. So we have 4, actually, 4
So
meetings.
4.
You know? Yeah, it's
That's
usually,
what she preferred.
yes, Ms. Merkel?
I move that we amend item number 12E on the what we call this contract, interim town administrator contract, to read the second sentence. IA agrees to be available for the regular board meeting scheduled on the 2nd and 4th Tuesday evenings of the month.
Okay,
Second, Deb.
discussion from the board?
We're
Just
getting
more
there.
flexibility.
Yeah. All right, from the public? Yes, Ms. White.
So I was listening to your discussion and now I'm hearing you saying that she's gonna be here till the end of January. That's not what the contract says. You're talking about the number of meetings until the end of January? Yes, that's what I heard.
It's 2 months. Yeah, well, that was a mistake.
Okay, okay, so then you're saying not less than 2 months. Is it just because 2 months isn't very long with the holidays or what? Okay, because I mean, are you stringing along your applicants for the permanent position?
Yeah.
I'm wondering, is this appropriate? I'm just asking. It's not giggles or anything.
Well, we're going to discuss this when we get to the personnel section of the meeting, so wait until then.
Okay, well, good. I'm glad to hear the plan.
All right,
Thanks.
yeah, sure.
So comments on.
We are discussing the word available,
The word.
On-site
the
person.
word available.
I have another comment.
Well, we're not there. Yes, available is all we're talking about.
I'm just gonna riff on the word available. Because has anybody really just looked at and crunched the numbers as to how much, like, on average, you think you're gonna pay comprehensively for this person? How much would it be, say?
It would be that 85 times 24 hours a week. That'll be probably on a weekly basis. So do that.
2,040, yeah, plus the,
All right, whatever.
is that seeming low or?
No, that seems high, but
And then take the $1,000 travel, 3 meetings,
Right.
add that to it.
So for
And take
two
the
solid
20
months,
Take the 2040 times 8 weeks.
so like 16,000 plus.
She's taking
1,000
time off.
So like 20 grand.
yeah, but she's taking time off at Christmas and Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
All right, we have a motion and a second to replace on-site with available. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right. Anything else from the board?
Did we approve the contract?
Not yet. We're working on
Still digging our
it.
way through a amendment night.
Anybody else?
I agree.
All right, we have a contract. with-
What's the basis of the $50 a night? Because that's not, you can't.
She has found accommodations at a B and B for $50 a night.
She said.
It's at your place, don't you know?
We're closed, buddy.
She has found accommodations,
That's good to hear then that there's.
Yes, sir.
other-
being that she's going to be here tomorrow. She has.
That's tomorrow's on 30.
Hmm?
Tomorrow on 30, then.
No, she's going to be here in time for the staff meeting at 11 o'clock. Yeah.
If she's watching tonight, it's okay, really.
He's still on.
Everybody's screaming into the rails.
All right. Can we get an approval for the contract as amended?
Like to make a motion.
No.
That motion's already
I just got to do.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Oops, wait a minute. Oops.
Yes, we have a motion.
Wait a minute. We have a comment on the main motion.
Fine.
That's why we're here.
Number 6, conference and training. Why is that included in this? If she deems it necessary, or if you all deem it's necessary, to conference or training, that is okay. Lodging, travel, lodging, registration. What's the point? She's gonna be going to conferences during this short training?
Why?
I don't know, please remove that.
Right, can we have so we have an emotion to approve with the approve the contract. When we have amendments, can we get,
We already get there.
all right, all in favor? What did you say? Aye.
Let's be really clear. We have passed several amendments to this motion to change some of the wording in the contract so that there's more opportunity for remote work and less travel. And that it's not required that the person be here for the board meetings. So we've approved all those amendments. Now we're back to the original motion to approve this contract
With amendments.
with amendments.
All right.
Oh. That's big. Real quick.
Yes.
I don't think it's necessary that we make any more amendments as the conference and training clause number 6 requires written board approval for any attendance. So it would have to come to us first.
All
So I
right,
have to be serious. Thank you.
all right, all in favor? Opposed? All right, that motion passes. Okay,
Before moving on, I'd like to bring us back
we have
to,
15 minutes.
I'd like to bring us back to board integrity. And I don't know what everybody else feels about it. I feel like I went through my thoughts. I'd like to hear if anybody else feels the same way.
That's not on the agenda, is
No, it is not
It's not.
agenda.
It's okay, we can't make an emotion on, it. We can still talk about it.
Yes,
I think one thing that we need to really be careful of in general is that I feel like sometimes we rush through the motions or we make a motion and then don't think it through, because in this case, it would have been good, and again, this is hindsight, if Mary, when the motion was made, maybe you said, I'm not gonna be able to do this. But I think we all need a little time when we do these motions, and especially with some of the emotional subjects we have, we really need to think it through a little bit and the repercussions. And think about, can I really do this? Is that the right wording? Can we do this? Do we really want it back in 2 weeks? Are we gonna be able to do that? So it's just an overall thing I'm seeing is that we want to get through something, so we make a motion that maybe isn't as well thought as it could be. So I would just like to say going forward, if anybody volunteers for something, then think it through and let's think about, like, for instance, I agreed to the second meeting in January for Paonia motion, but I don't really want to talk about it in the second week in January. That's too soon. But I didn't speak up because it gets to be too much. But let's maybe be a little more cognizant of our time, what we have ahead of us, where are we going to be in January, what's going to be really important. So that's just my, because these motions, I think the other thing is, they've not mattered in a lot of cases because they've dropped off the radar. And I think we need to make sure the motions we make from here on out actually are motions of stuff we want to see done, make them well, and make sure they get done. So that's just.
Other comments on the board? Can we move on? Marco?
Yeah, I think that if we want to have a protocol for, sorry, we voted to do this thing, but it can't happen. I'm sorry, I'm too busy, or something came up, I'm out of town, whatever. That information, that communication be shared with the board. That's the only thing that makes sense. Because if Mary goes to Dave and says, hey, I'm sorry, I can't do this, that puts all the rest of us and all the people that we represent out of the picture. And that's not democracy. That's not what we're here to do. So yeah, let's be deliberate in what we do. And if we determine that we can't follow through with it, or we need to change something, bring it to everybody else if you can. There are always emergencies.
And I agree. I will let you
So this was an emergency at the time. We had been in executive session to interview these candidates. We had and if I cannot talk about the content of what we did in executive session, but that executive session was pretty clear about what the intent of the board was. I felt I was doing an administrative task, taking a check off of Mary's list. That's all I was trying to do. We had talked about what we thought that contract should say. We talked about the candidates, and that guidance was what I followed. That was the exact guidance that I followed. So I did not represent you or I represented the board in that thing, but I was not negotiating with her per se. All I was doing was taking what you had told us in executive session you wanted, make that happen. Because if I didn't do that, she wouldn't be coming tomorrow. That was the reality. And this was over the weekend. Mary was overwhelmed and in tears. What am I supposed to do? I'm here to try and support the town and do the best to my ability. And wherever I can serve, I'm willing to serve. And this was an opportunity to be able to step up to the plate and help out. And that's what I did. So,
and yes,
I don't feel like I was trying to misrepresent the board motion or any of those kind of things. It was pretty clear cut what had to be done here based on our executive session.
And I admit, I probably should have, and if I was in a better state, I probably would have been able to continue with the negotiation, to call up and but I was not in a state where I could do that. So I went to the person who I knew had the most expertise to be able to do that, and I asked for his help. And if, like I said, if I was in a better position, yes, I could have done it. And when I was able to be in a better position, it would have been much better if I would have emailed the board and said, I had this problem, I needed to ask for help, and I asked Mr. Tristan for help. And so I admit that I should have done that.
Yeah, I think that probably the personnel committee might have been a first step. And again, I appreciate that overwhelm is real and other things come up, and days off are really important. We haven't had a lot of those recently. So I get it. I just want to make sure that we act with integrity and respect the determinations of the board as individuals and as a group.
Okay, can we move on to the next item?
Sure.
Okay, next item is, please, can we, no, we don't have a motion, we don't have anything, we are moving on to the mayor's report. It is included. Are there any questions from the board on the mayor's report? Okay, if not, let's move on to finance.
I don't have anything to finance page, you got anything?
Okay, then let's move on to parks. We have 10 minutes. Anything?
Not very long report, just a meeting. Better get my date. We're meeting on the 15th, which will be Tuesday next week at 4 o'clock. We'll be meeting in Polis Park, weather permitting.
All right, for streets.
We're going to be meeting, see the 15th?
I think so.
Tuesday, the 15th. Monday, sorry, okay, Monday, sorry, my mistake, Monday, the 14th at 5 p.m.
You're gonna look
We're
at
gonna be,
flags.
we're gonna be discussing flags and street closure ordinance change.
Yeah, as soon as we get that done, that would be better. Okay, flags and street.
What time on the 14th? I'm sorry.
5 p.m.
Okay.
Here. We'll get that noticed. Are we doing notices to Amanda? Or Sam?
Sam.
Okay.
Just gonna ask.
Okay. I'll send you an email right now.
Rash, Reverend Markle.
The status report on the water and sewer is on page 28 of your packet, so I'm not going to reiterate that. Please review it so you know where we're at. Today, Paige and I signed checks for 200 remote reading water meters, so we're still replacing those, Corey and crew. The AWC ordinance 2-10-10 is kind of overly restrictive. We're having troubles meeting the requirement because we don't have volunteers stepping up to the from in town. I think we should probably get rid of that ordinance now that we have a water committee, but nonetheless still involve the citizens in the same way the AWC does. Because Phil Seriani's not coming now, he's kind of turned that part over to me because Jeremiah and Jordan have a voice on the council now through the water committee. So I'm not going to make any motions or anything, but that ordinance is just not working for us.
Okay, would you like me to put that on the next agenda?
We're running fine with it now. We just do, but we have a lot of stuff on the agendas. I think we should just, you can put it on your list, but don't make it a priority. I mean, we got some big fish to fry, and that one's kind of small.
So what about following the orders of the council? Thomas, how come you didn't jump on that?
Sorry, I'm talking about the same. You all know, I didn't hear the details of the conversation.
We are following the ordinance. It's just that it's not working because we don't have the volunteers stepping in.
Yeah, yes, I think we need.
I'd like to make a motion to extend the meeting to 10:15.
So when?
I mean, 9.
My bicycle.
45.
Second.
All in favor?
Stay.
We have 2 ayes, nay.
And nine.
Okay, you didn't, John, you didn't vote. Oh. Go time. All right, motion passes.
And one last thing on the water. We discussed this at the AWC meeting. The 1 million gallon tank, it's going to be coming online. We're making good progress on it, but it's kind of a white elephant. We poured a ton of money into that thing. And we considered, after our primary job, which is relining the 2 million gallon tank and fixing the 8-inch line that keeps blowing out, maybe we should consider putting a 2 million gallon tank on that property where the 1 million gallon tank is, and decommission that tank. That's something that I think council should consider because it's just a black hole for money. It has been for a long time. But that would be, this is off in the future because it's going to require a grant. And I'm not talking about tomorrow. What we're gonna do, well, we talked about, yes, but not dumping a whole lot more money into the 1 million gallon tank, but do a nice Western Colorado baling wire and scotch tape and stuff and keep the thing functional, but still meeting all the state requirements. And then plan for a better replacement. That's it for water.
All right, now the big one, personnel.
Okay, in the packet, there is a rundown of all the publications where the clerk has gone. And like I said, we have 2 incomplete applications per clerk. So it was $1,600, closes on the 14th. I think the universe is trying to tell us something. So that we probably, well, we'll have to decide what to do. But I also added in here because Corinda made a comment that on the clerk's listserv, people were saying what we were proposing for our salary range was too low. So that's the second half of this memo. And I just wanted to show what people are paying just for transparency's sake. Not that we need to do anything tonight because we're gonna have to decide what to do about the clerk, maybe punt till we have our permanent administrator. And then on the administrator front, there are 2 executive sessions tomorrow. We are interviewing 3 people on Wednesday and 3 people on Thursday. There is a screening. These are preliminary.
Yeah.
Preliminary.
So we have one executive session tomorrow, one executive
And one
session
on Thursday. We have an additional applicant that I've not been able to get a scheduled time with, and that would be the weekend. Yeah, but it's not looking good based on all of your meetings. But I will send another email to you all for scheduling on that. And so that is preliminary, and out of that, we would determine finalists. And once finalists are chosen, and if those people agree to be finalists, that becomes public information. Just their applications, their resume, cover letter. Yeah, resume and cover letter are open to public inspection, but letters of reference aren't, any psychological things, anything like that. And so that, we'll have to talk about that in public, and it has to go in the newspaper for 2 weeks, I believe, before an offer can be made.
But I think too, it seems to me that what we need to do is we need to do in-person interviews.
Right.
And we need to have community interviews, and we need to have interviews with, staff interviews, and we need,
Well, that was the memo that I created with John a few meetings ago. I might have put it in the last one, but we should probably resurrect that and bring it back forward so we can talk in public about panels, how to set them up. But I think the thing to keep in mind is it's still the trustees' decision.
Right.
Who gets hired, but the more folks that get to meet, or citizen panel, staff panel, and some trustees should be in there. I don't think all the trustees should be on the panels, but perhaps John and myself as personnel committee. So we are there to see all the interactions all the way through. And then the talk was to have a meet and greet like they did with the police officers for other people and have forums so people can ask questions. But those are things we still need to determine. So the point being, this takes time. To get people here with the holidays. Yes. Whoever, it's all so wide open. And when it comes to doing hiring, so many things can happen with individual people. You really have to be open-minded and flexible. So that's why I am happy to see an interim till the end of the year. And so any questions about any of, and the other thing is I have sent you all interview questions for the beginning tomorrow.
Yes.
I'd like to thank the personnel committee for the work they've done. It's really professional.
Thank you. I've been wonderful through all of this. Okay. Public safety.
We've arranged with the new chief that we will have standing meetings on I believe it's the 3rd Tuesday of each month at 3 o'clock. So the parks meeting and the public safety meetings, and for both of that committee, we're doing it on the same day. So we will be meeting on the third Tuesday of each month, 3 o'clock. In this case, it'll be on the 15th of November at 3 o'clock here.
And the tree boards, just beyond that.
I've been out of town and I was going to talk to Paul Martin.
Yeah.
To get an update and didn't quite get it in time.
Okay, no problem. You still have openings on the tree
Yeah.
board? Okay, how many tree?
That's what I'm trying out about is where we are, where we stand with all that. Who's
Okay.
how many openings are still there? Well, they're all still
Okay. All right.
there. Since we haven't done anything.
Oh, my God, it's 9:30.
Yeah, sorry, I had a question about personnel.
Yeah, sure.
Let's get away from it. And I agree, I think the, town manager stuff's going great. It sounds like the clerk stuff, not so great. But regarding salary, based on a list that you provided us, there are only 3 examples of towns that are paying higher than what we have out of the list of 15. So our offer is numerically pretty good. So I feel like that may not be the issue.
Right.
I mean, if that's just what we're looking at, but
Let me take a stab at the issue. Sure. The issue is how this board behaves in public meetings and how the public behaves in public meetings. And I think anyone that's, anyone.
Yes, Watson,
Watson been telling us behind me.
then your lips are moving quite nicely. No, you please, you do not have the floor. You cannot speak if you.
I know
do
you
not
have
have the floor.
So I would suggest that salary is not a barrier. And that anyone who's a clerk would go into a YouTube channel and watch the town meetings. Our town meetings do not reflect well on our town. And I think that's part of the reason. So that's my theory. I just want to throw that out there, that all of us in our own ways have contributed to a dysfunctional reputation for the town, and that may be prohibiting us from getting the candidates we need.
The other thing, would you please tell about what you've been doing, talking to other towns about clerk fill-ins? Because one of the suggestions that was made when we were interviewing our interims, Rob made the suggestion that we actually see if we can get help from the town of Montrose, that they have done that prior to bringing in town clerks to help out. And so Mr. Knutz has actually been pursuing that.
Well, Rob was one of the people that we interviewed 2 candidates for interims.
Rob Johnson?
I don't know.
I'm sorry.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That was a little, anyway.
not that we're putting duct tape on your mouth.
No, I understand. We have some possibilities that the town administrator of Delta has said that there's some
Interim clerks.
yeah, and this would be helpful. The Clerks Association has some possibilities. So there's some avenues there for the personnel committee to pursue. And maybe that's one thing like we did with the town administrator, where you were looking for a town administrator at the same time you started looking for an interim. So I think that's the path forward here too, is also, what are we going to do? How can we get the expertise in the meantime? Because we need that. We need to have someone who knows the clerk job in here to be able to do that. So we have some possibilities out there.
Are the board action appropriate to change anything about?
I think it would be good.
The search.
I'd like to make a motion that we direct the personnel committee to pursue interim clerk support for our staff and for the board.
Second.
Discussion?
One comment, clerk's a statutory position. I'm not sure how that fits.
Yeah, Nick, do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, it's a very good point. I think as far as a interim town clerk goes, that does happen. Is the board suggesting that the interim town clerk be an independent contractor and not an employee of the town? Okay. I've seen this happen. It's not exactly clear in the statutes whether it's something that's authorized. But municipalities do proceed in that manner. And just another one of our clients recently has hired an intern finance director that's an independent contractor, for example. So it does seem to be something that is allowed, even though it's not altogether clear in the statutes. Other municipalities do it. And I think what outweighs the gray area in the statute is the necessity of having a town clerk. So I think the board can be rest assured that that's something that is considered permissible.
Can I just ask?
Yeah.
On the behalf of the personnel committee, I don't know of any of these contacts yet, so as part of the motion, can we? I guess, could trustee Knutson email us names and addresses and phone numbers? We can follow up on.
Yeah, and that doesn't need to be part of it.
Right, okay, I just want to, this is one of those things, we do a motion and then I go, well, now what? So I just want to cover the now what's, thank you.
All right, so we have a motion and a second for personnel committee to pursue an interim town clerk or help with as an interim support. Support, that's a better word, support for an interim town clerk. Further discussion from the board? Okay, discussion from the public? All right, seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. Yeah, that was a very good suggestion from Murray, I think, today. All right, anything else from the board?
How did we do?
Pardon?
How did we do?
Oh, how did we do? Very good. All right.
I just think, I know that trustee Knudsen said that we were dysfunctional, but hey, we almost made it through a fairly long agenda by 9:30. I'd see it's tightening up. There's still dissension in the board. A little bit of dissension's good. It's what actually creates, the friction creates good ideas. So I think we're getting somewhere. That's my feeling.
I would say dissension is good as well. I think it's how we handle the dissension, it's not the fact of dissension. Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Melville?
I would like to hear less shouting.
Yes, I take responsibility. Yes.
There's a difference between disagreeing and being disagreeable.
Yeah.
You can be both.
This has to do, I think we are doing much better. And this is a follow-up to, I'm sorry, I didn't think about it, for the streets committee. Can board members send you draft language for your meeting, or is that considered? I probably can't. Could I, as a board member, Nick, send draft language to the streets committee on, in particular, street closure ordinance? Or when would be a time that a trustee can come up with some draft language that I'd like considered?
Well, there's, as far as the open meetings law goes, so the streets committee is made up of 2 members of the board, correct? So if you sent some draft revisions to the street closure permit, that would not in itself be a violation of the open meetings law. If there were any back and forth with you from the streets committee, that's when the violation would occur.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So if I'm understanding that right, with any one of our committees, any of the board members could give input to what the committee is doing at any given time. It's just when we start going back and forth. For instance, if Paige had a suggestion on parks, or trustee Markle had a suggestion on parks and sent it to Rick and myself, or should they send it to one of the members? I think that's the thing. We've been kind of avoiding trying to get 3 people on an email. I want to be really clear about how we're doing that communication.
Yeah, that's a good clarification. I still believe that to use your example, if the email message were sent to the 2 members, and even though 3 board members are included on that email, that's not a discussion among 3 people. The discussion really occurs if there was a reply all to that message, and then all of a sudden, the 3 board members are actually having that discussion outside of a publicly noticed meeting. So it is, the devil really is in the details with the open meetings law, but that in and of itself would not be a violation. I think where it can get even trickier, just to use another example, because I think that this is an important topic. Let's say someone did send an email to just one board member, and then that board member took those comments, evaluated them, and then sent that draft off and mentioned what one of the original board members sent the comments said. Then all of a sudden you're getting a chain of comments, and you're really discussing multiple board members' comments under the guise of one document. So that gets to be a point where it's also a violation of the open meetings law. And I hope that wasn't unclear.
We have another example I want to ask you about. So if 3 trustees get really upset after a meeting and they're trying to debrief the meeting, but they're not discussing town business per se. Is that like, for instance, it was awkward. Dave and I were talking during the break, and Thomas tried to approach us, and it's like, wow, 3 of us can't be in one place. It seems a little ridiculous.
I think that's a good point. I think what's key in that consideration is whether there's public business being discussed. A debrief in itself, in the way it was described in the emails and included in the packet, I don't believe that an open meetings violation occurred. And that's because, and as one of the emails identified, that's because there was no pending matter before the board that was being discussed. The matter was over with, so technically that's not public business by the legal definition.
Thank you.
All right, I'm adjourning the meeting.
We got 3 more minutes.
No, I'm adjourning the meeting. We have finished our business. You may talk amongst yourselves now as you wish. The board is adjourned. Sorry, it's done. It's done. Sorry. Now we're just neighbors, talk as neighbors.
So is the public privy to the language that you're, or is it considered work product?
For what?
I make this